Tonight we stand beneath the quiet museum light of Oxford, where a small object of baked clay rests behind glass. It is not gold. It is not a weapon. It is not the jewelled tomb offering of some forgotten queen. Yet the Ashmolean Museum regards this clay prism as one of the most important records surviving from ancient Mesopotamia. Presented to the museum in 1923, it carries 8 narrow columns of Sumerian writing, pressed into clay nearly 4,000 years ago. Those signs record rulers, cities, reigns, disasters, and a strange beginning for human authority. Kingship, the text suggests, didn't rise from the ambition of men, it descended from heaven. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And as the room grows still around you, share where you are listening from and the local time wherever night has found you. You find yourself standing close to the glass, close enough to notice the uneven brown surface. The prism is smaller than expectation allows. History often is. You imagine ancient truth arriving as a colossal monument, towering over a ruined plain, accompanied by thunder and very serious music. Instead, it can sit quietly in a museum case, shaped by hands that vanished thousands of years ago, looking almost modest. A clay object, a few scratches, a story large enough to trouble the sleep of kings. Its writing was not made with ink. A reed stylus pressed little wedges into damp clay, each mark purposeful, each line a narrow channel through time. The scribe who prepared such a list worked within a world of temples, officials, grain accounts, royal claims, and divine names. He was not composing fantasy for entertainment. He was arranging memory into order. He was explaining why one city ruled, why another fell, and why power seemed to travel across the land like a sacred flame that no human hand could own forever. The prism names a succession of cities and rulers in the flat river country now called southern Iraq. Some rulers belong to a world that becomes steadily more recognizable. Others inhabit distances so vast that the mind cannot settle around them. Their reigns last not for decades, but for thousands upon thousands of years. The museum itself explains that the list mixes legend, myth, and historical information. That distinction matters. The tablet is not a simple chronicle, not a neat calendar waiting to be believed word for word. It is something more delicate and more revealing. It is a statement about how authority was imagined. You let the museum walls recede, and the dry scent of clay changes into warm dust. Beneath your feet, polished flooring becomes the packed earth of an ancient courtyard. The light above you turns yellow, like sunlight pressed through river haze. Beyond a wall of mud brick, reeds shiver beside slow water. Boats move quietly through canals, their cargoes bundled beneath woven coverings. Somewhere, grain is measured. Somewhere, incense smoulders near a shrine. Somewhere, a ruler hears his name repeated beside the name of a god. For the people who lived within that landscape, government was never merely practical. A canal did not simply carry irrigation water, it preserved fields from hunger. A temple did not simply store offerings, it stood as a household for divine presence. A king did not merely command workers or lead soldiers, he occupied a dangerous place between the needs of people and the invisible demands of heaven. To hold power was to claim that the greater order of existence had permitted it. That was a useful claim, naturally. Human rulers have always enjoyed discovering that the universe happens to support their promotion. Yet the Sumerian King List does something unusual with that claim. It does not begin by celebrating a single family. It begins with kingship itself, as though rule existed independently of rulers. The office is pictured almost like an object lowered into the human world, a crown, a seat, a burden, a permission. The man who holds it matters, but the force behind it matters more. No king simply invents his right to command. He receives it, keeps it briefly, then loses it when divine favour turns elsewhere. Here the mystery begins to breathe. The title of this story speaks of a treaty between the Anunnaki and human kings. No surviving Sumerian tablet has been found bearing a signed agreement. With clauses arranged like a modern contract, there is no clay document stating that the gods assembled, summoned earthly rulers, and placed their seals beneath negotiated terms. The honest path must remain quiet and careful. What survives is stranger in another way. Across royal traditions, temple duties, divine assemblies, sacred blessings, and warnings of downfall, you begin to sense an arrangement that never needed to call itself a treaty. It is written through expectation. The gods grant order, the king maintains it. The land provides abundance when the relationship holds. When the ruler fails, cities falter, dynasties end, enemies appear, and sacred approval moves elsewhere. To modernize, this resembles political theology, a language designed to steady unstable thrones. To ancient ears, it may have sounded like the shape of reality itself. The heavens above, the mud below, the temple in the center, and the king walking solemnly between them. The beings later called the Anunnaki belong to that sacred universe. In the earliest surviving traditions, they are not described as engineers arriving in shining vessels, nor as secret emperors signing documents with frightened human subjects. They appear as a group of powerful gods within Mesopotamian religious thought, associated with divine authority and the ordering of destiny. Modern fringe readings sometimes imagine the phrase about heavenly kingship as evidence of visitors who installed rulers upon earth. It is an arresting picture, certainly. It is also far more modern than the clay itself. Still, even when extravagant claims are set gently aside, the tablet retains its shadow. Why should kingship descend at all? Why does human society begin, in this old telling, not with a village council, not with an ambitious war leader, but with a power delivered from beyond ordinary human reach? Scholars continue to debate how much of the list preserves distant political memory, and how much reshapes the past for later royal legitimacy. The Ashmolean prism was probably made around 1800 before the Common Era, during an age when competing rulers had strong reasons to claim they inherited the rightful order of earlier cities. That explanation is persuasive. It is sensible. It may also be only part of what made the story endure, for a list made merely to support a throne must still speak in a language people recognize. It must draw upon ideas that feel older than any single ruler. The scribe does not say that kingship was created by clever administrators. He reaches upward. He places authority in the heavens among the divine powers, where human ambition becomes sacred duty and obedience becomes participation in cosmic order. The clay prism rests silently beneath its light. Around it, visitors pass with soft footsteps, perhaps glancing only briefly before moving onward to brighter objects, but you remain there. You look at the small, marked surface and consider the first unsettling possibility. Perhaps the ancient agreement was never written as a treaty because it was believed to exist everywhere, in the temple offering, in the royal crown, in the harvest measure, in the ruined city abandoned to dust. And somewhere within those narrow wedges of clay, human kings are already listening for terms they did not compose. The air is warmer now, heavy with moisture, insects, and the green smell of reeds. You stand where the land barely decides whether it wishes to be earth or water. Channels glimmer beneath the pale morning sky. Mud presses softly beneath bare feet. A narrow boat slips between reed walls, guided by a pole and the practiced strength of a fisherman whose family has known these waters for generations. This is southern Mesopotamia, the low plain where the Tigris and Euphrates approach the sea. It is not an easy birthplace for civilization. There is little timber for grand roofs, little stone for proud monuments, and summer heat that settles over the land like a closed hand. Yet water moves everywhere. With patient labour, water can be directed. With directed water, grain can rise. With grain, families gather. with gathered families. Villages become towns. Then towns begin asking who controls the channels, who settles disputes, and who speaks for the gods when the river does not behave. Along the marsh edge, the earliest communities build from what the landscape offers. Reeds become mats, roofs, boats, fences, and baskets. Clay becomes bowls, walls, storage jars, and the first solid shapes of shared life. Fish dry in the sun. Waterbirds scatter at the sound of children near the bank. Shells glisten among refuse heaps. A cooking fire sends thin smoke into the damp air, mingling with the scent of crushed plants and river mud. Researchers from the University of Pennsylvania describe these early settlements as communities shaped by estuarine marshes and coastal waters. Their inhabitants eat fish, birds, shellfish, and cereals that thrive in wet soil. Even temple offerings reflect that watery existence. Shark and deep sea fish are carried into sacred spaces. Small clay boats are placed upon altars, perhaps seeking protection for journeys through uncertain channels. This is a religion already listening to the landscape. The gods do not arrive in empty abstraction. They dwell where hunger, current, storm, and survival meet. You move along a raised embankment, where workers reinforce a canal with packed mud. Their baskets leave wet trails across their shoulders. Someone calls instructions from higher ground, while another stamps a leak closed with both heels. Water is generous, but never obedient for long. It silts channels, floods fields, retreats from planted grain, and finds weaknesses with almost comic determination. A canal must be cleaned, a bank must be repaired, a gate must be opened at the proper hour. That daily necessity quietly changes society. The field belonging to one household now depends upon work performed by many households. Water must be apportioned. Labour must be organised. Storehouses must receive grain against years of scarcity. Records must eventually count who brought what, who received rations, and which offering belongs to the temple. In the beginning, authority may arrive without ceremony, wearing muddy feet and carrying a measuring rope, yet soon it learns to stand upon a platform. The land supports remarkable growth. During the age associated with the great city of Uruk, settlements expand into a network of fields, workshops, waterways, and ceremonial districts. Uruk grows beyond the scale of a village imagination, covering more than 250 hectares. At sunset, its walls and sacred precincts would have risen from the plain like an impossible statement. Many thousands of lives gathered beneath one organised order. You hear that city before you fully see it. Donkeys complain under loads of barley. Potters speak beside rows of drying vessels. Copper strikes stone in a workshop. Reed sandals scuff through narrow lanes. Near a larger courtyard, offerings arrive in baskets, jars, and bundles. The smell changes there. Bread, beer, wool, lamp smoke, and sweet resin mingle beneath the walls of pale mud brick. A city carries the perfume of effort, and very little of it is elegant. The temple rises at the centre of that effort, not simply as a quiet house for prayer, but as a commanding institution. Its buildings hold goods, employ workers, manage lands, sponsor rituals, and embody the favour of the city god. Every community claims a divine patron, a presence bound to its fate. The city belongs to its god in a way that feels intimate and absolute. Human beings cultivate the fields, but the fields lie within a sacred domain. Human hands build walls, but walls protect a place whose deepest owner is not human. There is a peculiar tenderness in this arrangement. A family may place a simple offering in a neighbourhood shrine, hoping for health, children, safe travel, or rain at the correct moment. A fisherman may dedicate a tiny boat, no bigger than his hand, trusting that the divine world understands currents better than any mortal sailor. And perhaps it does. Any person who has drifted helplessly into reeds, while pretending complete competence, may accept the value of supernatural assistance, still, temple power is never only comforting. Grain offered to a god must be gathered by officials. Land associated with a sanctuary must be cultivated by labourers. Ceremonies require animals, textiles, vessels, musicians, and food. The greater the city grows, the greater the divine household becomes. Its god is unseen. Yet the god possesses buildings, fields, herds, meals, servants, and representatives. Sacred order becomes an economy. Reverence acquires ledgers. Within this world, a ruler begins to take a recognizable shape. He is expected to dig canals, restore temples, protect fields, guide ceremonies, and defend the boundaries where another city desires the same fertile soil. He is not yet merely a man seated above others. He becomes the chief caretaker of a divine estate. When he raises a temple wall, he shows humility to the god and power to the people at the same moment. It is a wonderfully efficient performance. At Lagash, a powerful city of the southern plain, modern archaeological work led by the University of Pennsylvania has revealed an urban settlement reaching roughly 600 hectares at its height. The region includes farmland, wetlands, pasture, waterways, and settlements connected through canals used for travel and ritual movement. Such discoveries confirm that city power grows from more than royal speeches. It grows from water routes, harvest schedules, workers, herds, workshops, and the enormous task of keeping everyone fed. Even discarded mud brick holds a smaller surprise. Museum studies note that brick set out to dry sometimes preserve the footprints of wandering dogs. Some carry scratched game boards, apparently made by workers waiting between tasks. The city that presents itself to the gods with solemn rituals is also a place where a dog ruins a brick and builders pass idle minutes playing a race game. Sacred government rises from very ordinary interruptions. Scholars still examine whether temples first directed economic life on a broad scale, or whether their dominance grew alongside other powerful households and local authorities. The evidence does not unfold into one tidy origin story. Clay buildings collapse, channels shift, and records survive unevenly. What remains clear is that religion and administration become closely entangled in the first cities. The god requires a house. The house requires supplies. Supplies require organization. Organization invites a leader who can claim that his decisions preserve more than convenience. Night settles across the wet plain. Frogs sound in hidden pools. A temple platform catches the last grey light above roofs and reed shelters. In its shadow, workers return from canals, hands stiff with dried mud. A priest prepares offerings. A ruler studies the water level in the fields, perhaps with more anxiety than dignity. Above him stands the house of the god. Around him rests the fragile city. Beneath him, the river soil holds every harvest and every threat. In such a place, authority does not need to descend loudly. It rises from the mud, then turns its face toward heaven. A hush gathers inside the sanctuary, thickened by lamp smoke and the mineral coolness of plastered walls. Your eyes adjust slowly. At first, only the flame is visible, trembling in a shallow bowl. Then shapes begin to appear, a low platform, polished vessels, folded cloth, and a sacred image standing beneath a canopy. Outside, sandals touch stone with careful restraint. Inside, no one behaves as though the room is empty. The god is present. In the Sumerian imagination, divine beings do not hover vaguely above the world like distant ideas. They possess names, households, attendants, moods, rivalries, and powers that reach across the order of existence. They feast, command, judge, bless, become offended, withdraw favour, and return when properly honoured. Their world resembles the human world, except that every gesture carries the force of weather, harvest, illness, victory, and death. Among these divine beings stands a gathering called the Anunna. In writings preserved through the Oxford collection of Sumerian literature, the Anunna appear as great gods, an assembled body able to praise, judge, and acknowledge authority. In the related Akkadian language, their name becomes Anunnaki. This is the name that travels most widely into modern conversation, often carrying luggage the ancient scribes never packed for it. You hear a low chant rising near the sacred chamber. Priests speak the names of great powers in measured order. High above them belongs An, Lord of the distant heavens, remote and immense. Enlil commands wind, authority, and the force of royal decree. Enki governs wisdom, fresh water, skilled craft, and the clever turning of fate. The bright and dangerous Inanna embodies desire, battle, beauty, ambition, and changes of fortune sharp enough to humble anyone foolish enough to underestimate her. These are not simple figures in a bedtime tale. Each divine personality belongs to a web of local loyalties and sacred traditions. A city may honour one god as its special protector, yet no god stands entirely alone. Their decisions unfold within a larger assembly, a divine gathering whose approval makes order possible. A king beneath such a heaven does not merely hope that one helpful deity likes him, he lives beneath a council. For a moment, it feels as though the walls grow taller. The lamplight catches gold fittings on a ceremonial object. You sense a presence not because anything moves, but because everyone surrounding you has learned to stand differently here. A servant lowers his voice. A musician waits for a signal. A priest steadies a vessel with both hands. Reverence has its own sound, almost quieter than silence. The Anunna are not described in the earliest Sumerian compositions as travellers arriving from another planet. No tablet tells of engines descending into a barley field. No royal account records a metallic craft parked beside a shrine. Those images arise from modern reinterpretations, imaginative and lucrative in equal measure. Ancient clay gives a subtler vision. The Anunna belong to the divine order itself, powerful figures whose assembly helps explain why destiny falls one way rather than another. This is not less mysterious. It is more intimate. The gods are close enough to require care, yet distant enough to inspire trembling. Their statues are washed, dressed, adorned, carried in procession, and seated where offerings are prepared. Food is laid before a divine image, and music enters the chamber like perfume. A god may even travel by ceremonial boat, gliding along a canal while citizens watch from banks and doorways. Apparently, even immortals appreciate arriving in style, and a dignified barge saves everyone the embarrassment of divine mud on divine sandals. Yet the image is not merely decoration. To those who serve it, the statue offers a physical place where sacred presence may settle. It permits attention to be directed. A human being cannot dress the sky or feed the force that determines fate. A sacred form allows devotion to become visible. Cloth can be folded, bread can be offered, a hymn can be sung into a room where the invisible has been given a seat. You watch the procession pass through a courtyard at twilight. Torches illuminate the faces of attendants. A drum sounds, deep and unhurried, as though it follows the heart of the city itself. Above the crowd, the divine image moves beneath patterned cloth. Children stare upward. Older people bow with familiar grace. Those in power stand nearest, dressed in careful magnificence, because divine nearness is never politically inconvenient. The assembly of gods carries an even greater weight than one procession can display. In Sumerian compositions, the Anunna may gather around a major deity and acknowledge that deity's powers. They may stand within scenes of cosmic decision, where the order of the world is established, renewed, or threatened. The image is remarkably formal. The divine realm is not chaos. It holds rank, ceremony, judgment, and decisions whose consequences fall upon human fields and human homes. A ruler seeking legitimacy within such a world cannot behave as though he commands by strength alone. Strength may seize a gate, It cannot persuade a people that the stars, rivers, gods, and ancestral customs approve his seat. He needs a sacred vocabulary. He needs recognition from powers beyond ordinary argument. No farmer can personally inspect the minutes of a divine council meeting. That small inconvenience gives royal ritual considerable room to operate. Yet faith cannot simply be dismissed as royal theatre. The workers, singers, scribes, and families who bring offerings are not necessarily pretending for political convenience. They live in a world where infant survival is uncertain, rainfall uneven, illness mysterious, and enemies alarmingly real. A divine assembly offers a pattern behind events that otherwise feel cruelly random. Perhaps hardship follows offence. Perhaps blessing can be restored. Perhaps justice exists above the reach of corrupt hands. Researchers associated with the University of Pennsylvania have emphasized that the identity and role of the Anunnaki do not remain completely fixed through Mesopotamian history. In Sumerian material, they can appear among the highest gods. In texts written in different periods and languages, they may be linked more strongly with judgment and the realm of the dead. Their number also shifts. Their membership is not listed with the neatness a modern administrator might prefer. Scholars continue to discuss whether the term always names a clearly defined group, or whether its meaning changes according to time, place, and literary purpose. This uncertainty is important. The Anunnaki are not a single secret file waiting to be decoded by one dramatic translation. They are a sacred category moving through centuries of thought, shaped by worship, poetry, politics, fear, and hope. The chant within the sanctuary begins to fade. One flame gutters in the draught, then steadies again. The sacred image remains still, its gaze fixed beyond the gathered worshippers. To human eyes, nothing has happened. No voice has issued from the shadows. No heavenly council has opened its doors. Still, every person in the room understands that human life rests beneath unseen decisions. Crops grow or fail. Illness enters or passes by. Armies return or disappear into dust. A ruler rises, speaks grandly, receives praise, and discovers that even his crown depends upon a judgment he cannot command. Above the sleeping streets, the great assembly waits within thought, ritual and clay. Not visitors hidden behind history, but powers woven through its deepest fears. And somewhere within their silent gathering, the fate of kings begins to look very small. In the dimness of a sleeping city, a door opens onto a chamber of polished clay. Oil lamps burn low along the wall, making bronze vessels gleam with a soft, uncertain light. A woven mat lies before a raised seat. Beside it rest the objects that transform a mortal body into something more dangerous: a staff of authority, a bright headpiece, a robe heavy with woven borders, and a seal capable of commanding men who will never see the hand that pressed it. You stand quietly near the doorway. No crowd fills the chamber yet. No music has begun. The objects wait alone, and somehow their silence is more impressive than any ceremony. A man may sleep, hunger, fear illness, and complain about the heat like every other person in the city. But place him upon that seat, clothe him in sacred approval, and the world begins to call him king. The ancient Sumerian text gives this transformation an origin both simple and immense. Kingship descends from heaven. It does not slowly emerge from bargaining elders. It does not creep from a wealthy household, nor stumble into existence through military success. In the sacred account, kingship arrives already formed, already powerful, already carrying an authority greater than the man who receives it. That distinction settles over the room like incense. A ruler is temporary. Kingship is not. One ruler grows old, another is defeated, another vanishes from memory except for a few difficult signs impressed into clay. Yet kingship continues, passing onward like a sacred possession. It may settle in one city, then depart when that city falls. The ruler does not own it in any final sense. He holds it, as one might hold fire in a lamp, knowing that the flame can be carried elsewhere. The Oxford collection of translated Sumerian literature preserves the opening claim with remarkable directness. Kingship descends from heaven, then takes its place within a city. The language does not pause to justify itself. No explanation is offered for why heaven chooses to send rule into the human world. The act is stated with the calm certainty of sunrise. Authority arrives from above, and human history begins beneath its weight. You can almost feel the first ceremony gathering around that idea. The courtyard outside grows crowded. Musicians take their places with drums and lyres. Officials arrange themselves according to rank, each standing precisely where his dignity requires. Temple workers carry baskets of bread and vessels of beer. The chosen ruler approaches slowly, his feet clean, his hair prepared, his expression carefully controlled. A king may feel nervous, but he must never look surprised by destiny. At the threshold, ritual changes him. Perhaps sacred oil touches his forehead. Perhaps a priest announces divine favour before the watching people. Perhaps the ruler reaches for the staff, or sits upon a seat associated with judgment. The details vary among places and periods, and much has been swallowed by silence. Yet royal hymns and inscriptions make one conviction plain. A legitimate king does not present himself as merely successful. He has been chosen, loved, summoned, appointed, or placed in power by the gods. Records from ancient Mesopotamia confirm that rulers repeatedly describe their authority through divine selection. One king declares himself chosen by a great god. Another claims that a goddess has called his name. Another says he was given the task of establishing justice and caring for the people. Such phrases may sound gentle, almost pastoral, until you remember that the person speaking commands labour, land, soldiers, taxes, punishments, and the rebuilding of monumental temples. Divine affection is a remarkably useful political resource. Still, the claim carries obligations. A king selected by heaven cannot simply enjoy the palace cushions and request another tray of dates. He's expected to protect the weak, restrain violence, maintain irrigation, restore holy buildings, provide offerings, and ensure that the land flourishes. His success is evidence of favour. His failure invites dangerous questions. A poor harvest may be blamed upon drought, of course. But when suffering continues, people may wonder whether heaven has begun looking for a better representative. A breeze slips through the chamber and stirs the lamp flame. This ceremonial robe moves slightly upon its stand, as though an invisible body already inhabits it. You understand the subtle power of the arrangement. The king rules the people, yet the gods rule the king. At least, that is how the system speaks about itself. The throne is raised above ordinary life, but it is never raised above sacred judgment. In Sumerian tradition, the equipment of civilization and authority could itself be imagined as belonging first to the divine realm. A celebrated composition concerning the goddess Inanna and the wise god Enki describes sacred powers connected with society, ceremony, craft, judgment, music, office, and kingship. These powers are treated almost like valuable possessions, capable of being granted, guarded, transferred, or carried away. It is a wonderfully strange image. Civilization does not merely develop through practice and argument. It exists as a collection of sacred capacities. Rather like heaven maintains a storeroom full of every institution, humanity will eventually regret having meetings about. Within such thinking, kingship is more than a crown. It is a pattern placed upon human life. It teaches who commands, who serves, who judges, who gives offerings, and who bears responsibility when order collapses. The king does not only occupy the centre of the city, he becomes the visible point where the unseen arrangement touches earth. Scholars continue to question how early this idea became politically dominant, and whether it reflects the beliefs of ordinary farmers as clearly as the interests of royal courts and temple scribes. A labourer clearing a canal may have understood divine kingship very differently from the official composing praise in a palace school. Clay preserves the voices of institutions more often than the private doubts of exhausted workers. History, regrettably, has always been better at recording coronations than muttered complaints during irrigation duty. Yet the institution is difficult to escape. A seal is pressed into wet clay, and an order travels outward. Grain is gathered, walls rise, offerings enter a sanctuary, soldiers assemble at a gate. Judgment is pronounced beneath a ruler whose right to speak has been lifted above ordinary disagreement. Behind every command lies the greater claim that kingship was never humanity's invention to question freely. It was given. You draw nearer to the raised seat. Its wood is smooth where hands have touched it, where cloth has brushed against it, where rulers have settled their mortal weight beneath immortal expectations. Outside, the first drum sounds, a low note, then another. The courtyard stills. The man who enters will not descend from heaven. He will walk across the floor like any other human being. He will breathe lamp smoke. He will feel the robe on his shoulders and the watchful eyes upon his face. But the power placed around him will be described as something ancient, distant, and higher than choice, and in that quiet elevation of one human life above thousands of others, the terms of the sacred arrangement grow clearer. Heaven grants the office. The city accepts its bearer. The king receives splendour, duty, and fear together. For what descends as a gift may also descend as a burden, and no throne remains warm forever. A white brightness spreads across the southern plain, flattening the horizon beneath a sun without mercy. You walk beside shallow water where reeds grow in crowded green clusters, their narrow leaves whispering whenever a breeze reaches them. The ground is crusted with salt in places, pale and brittle beneath your sandals. Far ahead, a mound rises from the emptiness, low and worn, yet strangely commanding. This is Eridu, city that Sumerian tradition places at the threshold of organized rule. To the eye, it does not resemble a beginning worthy of legend. There are no shining towers, no streets crowded with carved monuments, no palace roof glittering above the marsh. There is earth, water, silence, and the remains of buildings layered patiently upon buildings. Yet the old scribes chose this place as the first earthly seat of kingship. Among all the cities of the plain, Eridu receives the sacred burden first. The name carries a softness when spoken quietly, like water moving beneath reeds. Eridu stands near the ancient shoreline of the Gulf, within a landscape where freshwater channels, lagoons, marshes, and cultivated ground meet. Here, the horizon feels open and uncertain. Birds turn in great groups over the water. Fish disturb the still surface with sudden silver movement. A fisherman returns with a narrow basket, while smoke rises from a hearth, beside a house built of reeds and packed mud. Nothing seems permanent here. Perhaps that is precisely why permanence had to be imagined. At the centre of Eridu stands the holy place of Enki, god of fresh water, wisdom, craft, and clever counsel. His sacred domain is connected with the hidden freshwater depths believed to lie beneath the earth. In a land where drinking water, irrigation, and survival depend upon unseen sources, this is no minor divine responsibility. Enki governs what cannot always be seen, yet upon which every planted field quietly depends. You approach his sanctuary through warm dust. A priest carries a shallow vessel toward the entrance. Its water catches sunlight like a fragment of sky. Another attendant bears fish prepared as an offering, their scales dulled beneath a covering of woven reed. The air smells of damp clay, smoke, and the faint sharpness of drying salt. There is no marble grandeur here. There is a more ancient dignity, formed from mud brick walls and the steady belief that wisdom dwells close to water Excavations led by Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd uncovered a remarkable sequence of sacred buildings at Eridu. One sanctuary was built upon the remains of another, with each new structure preserving the importance of the place beneath it. The oldest shrines were modest, little more than carefully arranged rooms of mud brick. Over generations, those rooms became larger and more formal, until the sacred ground carried the weight of repeated devotion. This matters because Eridu was holy long before any royal name could dominate its memory. The sanctuary did not need a king in order to be sacred. The king needed the sanctuary. You pause at the edge of a raised platform. Workers move baskets of mud brick toward a wall under repair. Their shoulders shine with sweat. A supervisor examines the alignment with a measuring cord, pretending calm while bricks lean at angles that clearly enjoy testing authority. Near the temple entrance, an offering table waits beneath shade. It is simple, solid, and worn through use. The ruler who steps into this place does not enter as an owner. He enters as a caretaker. The god's house existed as the city's heart, and royal duty must circle around that heart carefully. A ruler may provide labourers, supply offerings, restore walls, clear waterways, and present himself as favoured by Enki. Yet his power gains meaning only because the sacred place already commands reverence. The Oxford scholarly translation of the Sumerian King List names 2 rulers at Eridu, Alulim and Alalangar. Their names arrive without ordinary biography. You're not told which disputes they settled, which meals they preferred, or whether either possessed the common royal talent of being photographed beside impressive construction projects. They appear as occupants of an office lodged within a city already sanctified. That absence creates its own atmosphere. These rulers feel less like familiar men, and more like figures standing at the edge of memory. They belong to an age the scribes imagined as nearer to divine ordering, when the line between sacred beginning and human government was not yet blurred by ordinary records. Their importance lies not in personal detail, but in location. They rule at Eridu. They stand where kingship touches the earth first. A curious object recovered from the ancient site brings the landscape into sharper focus. Archaeologists found a small clay boat model, shaped with details suggesting mast, steering, and rigging. It is a humble thing, yet it seems perfectly suited to Eridu. Even sacred beginnings travel by water here. The image is almost charming. The first city of kingship keeping among its remains a little boat, as though authority itself required help crossing a marsh without becoming stuck among reeds. Beyond the shrine, daily life continues without pausing for grand ideas. Women shape dough beside ovens. Children watch birds probe the muddy edge of a canal. A herdsman curses gently at an animal, determined to move in the least useful direction. Men guide boats through narrow waterways carrying grain, fish, reeds, pottery, and perhaps offerings for Enki's table. The first royal city, in memory, is not born from polished ceremony alone. It is sustained by wet feet, sore backs, smoke, insects, and meals prepared under a difficult sun. The ruler at Eridu therefore holds a delicate position. He does not stand above chaos merely by wearing fine cloth. He must show that the human settlement remains in harmony with the sacred source beneath it. Fresh water must flow, offerings must arrive, the sanctuary must remain worthy. People must believe that the god's wisdom still rests upon the city. Scholars differ over how closely the legendary status of Eridu reflects political reality. Some see the city's first place in sacred storytelling as recognition of its very ancient religious importance. Others suggest that scribes shaped the distant past according to theological order, placing Enki's city at the beginning because beginnings belong naturally to wisdom and life-giving water. The surviving evidence does not force one single conclusion. It leaves room for clay, memory, and devotion to overlap. Evening draws near, and the hard brightness softens. The reeds darken against copper water. A breeze brings relief across the plain, carrying the smell of fish fires and damp earth. On the temple platform, An attendant lights a lamp. Its flame is tiny, almost fragile, yet visible from a surprising distance. You look toward the sanctuary of Enki and understand why the first king is imagined here. Not in a fortress bristling with weapons, not upon a mountain surrounded by thunder. He is placed beside the hidden waters, beside a shrine rebuilt through generations, beside a god associated with wisdom rather than noise. A human ruler may command hands and harvests, but at Eridu, his authority begins by bowing towards something older, quieter, and deeper than his throne. The tablet keeper lowers himself onto a reed mat, placing the clay copy carefully across his knees. His chamber is quiet except for the scratching of mice somewhere behind stacked jars. A lamp burns beside him, releasing the faint smell of sesame oil and blackened wick. Outside, a night wind moves through the city lanes, brushing dust against doors and carrying distant laughter from a courtyard meal. His finger travels down the written columns. There are names here that sound as though they belong to men, yet their lives refuse to behave like human lives. Alulim rules for 28,800 years. Al-Angar rules for 36,000. At Bad Tibira, Enmenluana is assigned 43,200 years, an expanse of time too vast for any breathing body to inhabit. The figures do not merely stretch belief, they carry it beyond the limits of ordinary thought. You sit near the scribe and feel the unease gathering slowly. A century is already too large to hold clearly in the mind. 1,000 years turns people into shadows and houses into buried foundations. But 43,000 years reaches far beyond family memory, beyond dynasties, beyond the rise and disappearance of languages. It opens a landscape where kings seem less like individuals and more like pillars supporting a sacred age. The ancient list does not apologize for these numbers. It gives them calmly, in the manner of an official record. 8 rulers hold kingship across 5 cities: Eridu, Bad Tibira, Larag, Zimbir, and Shurupak. Together, their reigns total 241,000. 200 years. A single lifetime cannot stand beside that number without looking wonderfully brief and slightly embarrassed. Records preserved in the University of Oxford collection confirm these immense totals within the version written on the famous prism. The numbers are expressed through a counting system familiar to Mesopotamian scribes. Based upon groups of 60, large units could unfold with graceful mathematical precision. A single great unit represented 3,600 years. Such numbers had order, symmetry, and a solemn beauty upon clay. The scribe before you understands those units easily. To him, they are not random exaggerations tossed into a tale. They are deliberate. Each reign is counted with a care that almost makes it more mysterious. If a storyteller wished only to suggest tremendous age, he could simply say that the kings lived for countless generations. Instead, someone calculated their rule, arranged their succession, and pressed each impossible duration into wet clay. Why? The answer may lie partly in the difference between sacred time and ordinary time. Your own life is measured by meals, seasons, birthdays, work, sleep, and the quiet disappearance of people you once expected to remain nearby. Sacred time behaves differently. It widens. It draws the first moments of existence away from ordinary decay. In many cultures, beginnings become larger than the present, because beginnings must explain everything that follows. The first rulers are not simply old, they belong to a world in which order possesses almost unimaginable strength. Your surroundings change with the scribe's recitation. The mud brick room fades, and the vanished cities take shape under a dim bronze sky. At Bad Tibira, smoke lifts from furnaces where metal workers tend glowing fires. The city name is associated in tradition with craftsmen and the working of metal, a place where heat transforms dull material into bright purpose. Hammers ring against stone supports. Sparks appear and vanish in the dark like small stars falling into dust. One of Batibira's rulers is Dumuzid, the shepherd, assigned a reign of 36,000 years. His presence is peculiar, for Dumuzid is also known within Sumerian religious tradition as a divine figure linked with shepherding, fertility, lament, and the goddess Inanna. A king stands in a list where god, hero, and ruler no longer separate cleanly. The old categories soften at their edges. You're reading political memory, perhaps, but memory filled with sacred mist. A fringe interpretation takes these enormous reigns as evidence that the rulers were not human at all. Some modern voices suggest that beings with lifetimes beyond earthly biology governed humanity during a forgotten age. The numbers, they argue, preserve literal records of non-human sovereigns. It's an intriguing thought to carry through a quiet evening, especially when the lamp throws shadows in unhelpful directions. Yet the clay offers no description of alien bodies, machines, or biological secrets. It gives names, cities, and numbers, leaving modern imagination to build the rest. Larag appears briefly in the sequence, entrusted to one ruler whose reign reaches 28,800 years. Then kingship settles in Zimbir, a city associated with the sun god and the bright discipline of divine judgment. Its ruler, Enmendurana, receives 21,000 years. Other Mesopotamian traditions remember a similarly named sage or king as one who learns secret forms of divination from the gods, oil upon water, signs within organs, and heavenly messages become methods for reading decisions hidden from ordinary sight. You imagine his city in morning light. Sun strikes pale walls and dazzles upon canal water. Within a sacred courtyard, trained observers examine patterns that appear meaningless to an uneducated eye. A movement in oil, an unusual marking, the placement of stars, all might carry significance. The ruler's impossible length of life now seems connected not merely with duration, but with access. He stands nearer to knowledge that ordinary humanity receives only in fragments. Shurpak holds the final reign in this enormous sequence. Its ruler, Ubara Tutu, governs for 18,600 years. Archaeology identifies Shurpak as a genuine Sumerian city, excavated in the modern settlement mound known as Fera. Tablets recovered. They preserve administrative writing from early urban life, practical documents concerned with management, goods, and institutional routines. The legendary horizon touches actual soil. A city assigned to remote sacred time leaves behind ordinary traces of people counting, storing, and organizing. This mixture is what makes the list so quietly disturbing. It does not remain safely within myth, and it does not rest comfortably within documented history. Real cities hold rulers with impossible lifetimes. Divine figures appear among royal names. Vast numbers gradually diminish until later entries begin to resemble reigns human bodies might survive. The tablet seems to move from another kind of world into the recognizably fragile one. Scholars continue to debate what these numbers were meant to communicate. Some read them as mathematical expressions of sacred greatness, placing earliest kings beyond comparison with ordinary rulers. Others see a literary construction shaped to organize scattered traditions into one majestic chain of authority. Researchers have also observed that such lists may have served political purposes, making the shifting rule of many cities appear like a single orderly succession. No surviving explanation from the scribe settles the matter completely. The lamp beside the tablet keeper grows lower. His face is lit from beneath, and the signs on the clay appear deeper than they did in daylight. He does not need to decide whether a Lulim breathed for thousands of years. His task is to preserve the line, the cities, the durations, the solemn weight of a world immeasurably older than his own. You listen as the final number is spoken. Outside, one season will pass into another. Crops will ripen, and rulers will age like every mortal creature. Yet upon the tablet, The first kings remain suspended in impossible time, guarding an origin no living person can question directly. Perhaps they are memories enlarged by reverence. Perhaps they are symbols made precise through number. Perhaps the past grows enormous when a civilization turns back toward its beginnings and finds only darkness. In that darkness, the kings do not disappear. They reign for ages. Reign begins as a faint tapping upon woven roofs, gentle enough that few people bother to rise. A woman turns a jar away from the doorway. A child sleeps beneath a wool covering. In a courtyard, a goat lifts its head, listens, then settles again with the exhausted confidence of a creature that believes humans will solve everything. The tapping grows steadier. By dawn, the sky has lost its colour. Clouds hang over the plain like dark clay pressed flat by an enormous hand. Water threads along pathways and gathers against thresholds. Canals rise beneath the rain, carrying reed fragments, broken baskets, and the pale foam of disturbed mud. Men step into the streets with ropes and tools, glancing toward embankments that have protected fields for generations. The river country knows floods. Water is never merely a visitor here. It is companion, employer, benefactor, and threat. Each planted field depends upon its movement, yet every wall understands how quickly generosity can become invasion. Usually, people manage the danger. They clear channels, strengthen banks, open gates, and trust experience. This morning, experience seems suddenly small. The rain continues, across the land. Water escapes its boundaries. It enters gardens first, bending herbs and drowning small fires. It pushes into storage yards, where grain jars are lifted desperately onto platforms. It fills alleyways until every step releases a wet sucking sound. A wall collapses with a low, heavy sigh. Nearby, someone shouts for help. Not loudly at first, because panic still hopes to remain dignified. Then the current arrives. You stand upon the roof of a mud brick house, feeling cold rain run along your arms. The city below no longer resembles streets and courtyards. Brown water twists between rooftops, bearing timber, pottery, reeds, and household objects released from careful ownership. A wooden stool turns slowly in the current. A basket catches against a wall, breaks free, and disappears. A clay cup floats for a moment, then sinks, which feels needlessly final for such a small thing. The Sumerian King List reaches this calamity with startling restraint. It has counted cities, rulers, and immense reigns with ritual patience. Then its voice narrows to a single terrible event. The flood sweeps over. No elaborate description is needed. The phrase cuts the ancient sequence in two. The first age does not gradually fade. It is covered in the sacred imagination. This is not merely bad weather. The flood becomes an interruption in the arrangement of the world. The cities entrusted with the earliest rulers are no longer protected by their antiquity. Their temples, fields, and royal houses cannot prevent water from erasing the distinction between palace floor and cattle yard. Kingship itself seems to vanish beneath the surface, as though heaven has withdrawn its gift while the land is washed into silence. At Churupak, the final city named in the ancient sequence, archaeology gives the story a quiet physical edge. Excavations at the Mound of Phara, conducted under the University of Pennsylvania Museum in 1931, uncovered a deposit associated with major flooding around 3000 before the Common Era. It was not proof that one flood covered the entire world. Archaeology rarely offers such theatrical satisfaction, yet it showed that the city remembered in flood tradition had indeed endured destructive water during its long life. You picture the excavators removing soil carefully, layer after layer, beneath a white sun. Their brushes and tools pass through human occupation, broken vessels, ash, walls, and abandonment. Then comes the sign of water, a deposit left by a force that enters without asking what people intended to build above it. Thousands of years separate the flooded city from the archaeologist kneeling in the trench. Still, the mud speaks with an uncomfortable clarity. Something happened here. Other Mesopotamian cities also reveal traces of flooding from differing periods. This matters because the low plain is shaped by rivers capable of changing course, breaching banks, and destroying settlements across broad local regions. A flood severe enough to erase homes, harvests, relatives, and sacred buildings does not need to cover every horizon of the planet to become the end of the world for those trapped inside it. A mother carrying a child through chest-deep water does not pause to classify the disaster as regional. In the temples, people may have asked what anger had gathered above them. Offerings had been made. Songs had been sung. Priests had kept sacred routines. Kings had worn the symbols of chosen rule. Yet the water rose without apparent respect for rank or devotion. A flood is rudely democratic in that way. It enters the storeroom of the wealthy and the sleeping corner of the poor with equal indifference. Ancient Mesopotamian literature preserves more than one memory of overwhelming water. In one Sumerian flood composition, the divine world determines that destruction will descend upon humankind. The text survives in damaged form, its missing lines leaving gaps where certainty would be convenient. There are laments, oaths among gods, and the knowledge that a human world stands beneath a decision made far above ordinary understanding. A curious modern reading claims that descriptions of destruction preserve evidence of a deliberate technological cleansing, carried out by powerful non-human rulers dissatisfied with their subjects. Such interpretations transform divine anger into engineered catastrophe, with floodwater serving as a weapon of control. The clay texts themselves do not describe machinery or hidden science. Their terror is more ancient. The beings who rule destiny need no device explained to the audience. Their decision is enough. That old fear settles deeply. If kingship had truly come from heaven, then kingship could not guarantee safety from heaven. A ruler might organize labor, judge disputes, guide ceremonies, and stand beneath sacred banners. Yet he could not bargain with rising water by royal dignity alone. The disaster exposes a limit within the supposed agreement. Human obedience may serve the gods, but it does not place the gods in human debt. Scholars remain divided over the relationship between excavated floods and literary tradition. Some suggest that severe local disasters, remembered and retold across generations, helped shape the great flood stories of Mesopotamia. Others emphasize that the literary flood is theological, used to explain the destruction and renewal of human order rather than preserve one identifiable event. The water found in earth and the water preserved in story may touch one another, yet they do not become identical. The rain weakens at last. No relief arrives with its silence. Beneath the grey sky, the plain has become an unfamiliar mirror. Roofs protrude like islands. Dead reeds cluster against collapsed walls. A broken door drifts through a courtyard where meals were once prepared, where arguments occurred, where children chased insects through dust. The familiar world has not ended with thunder or flame. It has simply softened, sagged, and washed away. In the distance, a temple platform remains visible above the water. Its walls are soaked dark, its steps lost beneath the flood. No procession climbs them. No ruler appears before the people. The sacred center stands alone, surrounded by the ruin of the community it was meant to protect. The tablet's brief statement now feels almost merciful. Long explanation would not improve the scene. A civilization can count thousands of years of rule, arrange its kings in solemn lines, and claim an order reaching upward into heaven. Then water moves across the land. The names remain in clay. The cities sink into memory. The first age closes beneath a surface of brown silence, and even kingship is nowhere to be seen. A wall of reeds trembles in the night wind, though no one stands upon the other side. You're inside a small chamber at Shurapak, where a single lamp stains the plaster with amber light. On the floor rests a cup of water, untouched. Beside it, a folded garment and a staff lie within easy reach of the man kneeling in prayer. His name is Ziusudra. He is not presented as a warrior charging through bronze gates, nor as a conqueror arranging captives beneath his throne. In the surviving Sumerian flood story, he appears as a king who is humble, attentive, and fearful of the divine world. He is described as one who makes offerings and bows in reverence. His strength begins not in the arm, but in the ability to listen when the ordinary noises of the city conceal something dreadful. Outside his residence, Shurpak breathes beneath darkness. Clay ovens cool behind houses, barley lies stored in sealed rooms. Donkeys shift restlessly in small enclosures, somewhere near a canal. A guard coughs and tightens his cloak. Nothing seems changed, yet the whole settlement stands close to a decision formed beyond human hearing. The gods have resolved upon destruction. The surviving tablet is damaged where you most wish it were complete. Words vanish into broken clay. Instructions emerge in fragments. Their missing lines leaving the imagination to move carefully through darkness. What remains is enough to reveal a king receiving secret warning from Enki, the wise lord of hidden waters. A great flood is coming. Human life stands in danger. Ziusudra is told to heed the message and prepare. The Penn Museum preserves this extraordinary tablet, written in Sumerian and copied during the 17th century before the Common Era. It was recovered from Nippur, a city famous for its sacred importance and its scribal tradition. The object is incomplete, damaged, and deeply frustrating in the way only a priceless ancient document can be. Yet its surviving lines hold one of humanity's oldest preserved stories of a chosen survivor warned against a coming flood. You picture Ziusudra rising from prayer, still hearing the warning within himself. He cannot walk into the marketplace and announce that the divine assembly has chosen ruin. Who would believe him? More dangerously, who might believe him too loudly? A king must govern visible matters. Grain, canals, walls, quarrels, livestock, ritual days. Now he has received knowledge that isolates him from the very people he serves. He moves through his residence with careful steps. Servants wake to find orders waiting. Reed bundles must be brought, timber, rope, pitch, food, jars, and tools must be assembled. Workers glance at one another, puzzled by the urgency. A vessel is to be built, great enough to endure more than ordinary river travel. Perhaps some obey because he is king. Perhaps some obey because fear in a ruler's eyes is more convincing than any speech. The tablet does not preserve the building instructions clearly. The broken surface has swallowed those practical details. You cannot watch the precise measurements unfold. You cannot know how long the preparation lasts, or which hands first shape the vessel. Yet the absence carries its own quiet power. Something enormous is taking form in a city that does not understand why it is needed. Along a muddy yard, ropes are twisted from plant fibres. Reed mats are bound tightly. Containers are sealed against moisture. Animals protest from temporary enclosures, disturbed by arrangements no creature would reasonably approve. Birds strike their wings against baskets. Sheep refuse cooperation with impressive moral certainty. A tired worker, scratched and splattered, may quietly wonder whether royal wisdom has finally become royal eccentricity. Still, the work proceeds. Ziusudra is trapped within a sacred contradiction. The gods have issued a decree against humankind, yet one god quietly allows humanity a narrow passage through it. Enki does not overturn the divine decision in a public challenge. He communicates warning indirectly, preserving both divine authority and human possibility. The king receives no promise that the waters will be gentle. He is given only knowledge and the burden of acting upon it. This resembles an agreement, though no terms are negotiated. Obey, and life may be preserved. Ignore the warning, and the city will pass into silence. The king becomes more than a ruler of households and fields. He becomes the keeper of a remnant, the bearer of human continuation within a world withdrawing its consent. Some modern enthusiasts have imagined that Ziusudra received technical instructions from advanced beings, transforming his vessel into an engineered survival craft designed by visitors with hidden knowledge. The idea has an appealing polish, especially for anyone disappointed that the ancient text refuses to include glowing controls and helpful diagrams. Yet the original tradition speaks through divine counsel, ritual reverenced storm, sacrifice, and survival. Its mystery lies in obedience under uncertainty, not machinery concealed behind translation. At last, the horizon darkens. The vessel is sealed against the weather, against the violent intrusion of water, perhaps against the desperate voices that come when warning turns into reality. That thought is difficult to hold for long. A survivor story comforts the listener only when the door has closed upon strangers whose names are never recorded. Wind strikes the city for 7 days and 7 nights. According to the Sumerian composition, storms and floodwaters overwhelm the land. Inside the great boat, time loses shape. There is no courtyard sunlight to measure morning, no dry threshold, no view of cultivated fields. There is movement, darkness, animal breath, damp rope, frightened murmurs, and the grinding sound of water taking possession of everything familiar. You crouch within that sealed space, close to jars and trembling livestock. The air is stale and warm. Each violent shift sends bodies against walls and containers sliding across the floor. Ziusudra cannot command the storm. He cannot stand before the flood as judge or priest. His royal voice is reduced to reassurance, instruction, and whispered prayer. A king survives here by becoming obedient. Scholars continue to examine whether Ziusudra began as the memory of an early ruler, a literary embodiment of piety, or a figure shaped through generations of flood storytelling. The surviving Sumerian tablet offers neither a royal biography nor a simple historical report. It presents a man chosen to preserve life because he listens faithfully when destruction has already been authorized. Then the violence eases. A pale brightness finds its way through an opening in the vessel. Sunlight touches wet wood, damp wool, skin, feathers, and clay jars. It must seem almost impossible, that first clean light entering a world of stale breath and darkness. Ziusudra bows low before the sun god. He offers an ox and a sheep, not as payment for survival, but as the first human gesture available when terror loosens its grip. The gods An and Enlil regard him with favour. The king who carried life through the waters is granted an existence beyond ordinary human limits. He is settled in Dilmun, the distant land where the sun rises, a place of purity and remote blessing within Mesopotamian imagination. You see him there only dimly, standing near bright water beneath a clean horizon. He has survived, yet he no longer belongs completely to ordinary humanity. The obedient king becomes a figure set apart, preserved like a memory too sacred to remain among common streets. The city is gone from his hands. The people he could not carry are silent. His reward contains loneliness, and so the hidden arrangement deepens. A king may receive warning, preserve life, and earn divine favour, yet he does so beneath decisions he cannot prevent, serving powers whose mercy arrives only through a narrow, trembling door. Mud dries in ridges beneath a pale sun. The plain exhales a sour scent of wet reeds, spoiled grain, fish, and clay walls softened into shapeless heaps. Water still lies in shallow pools across abandoned courtyards, reflecting a sky that offers no explanation. Here and there, people move carefully through the wreckage, searching for jars, tools, roof beams, and familiar objects that might make the ruined ground feel inhabited again. A woman finds grinding stone half buried in silt. She kneels beside it, washes the surface with water from a cup, and carries it toward a newly cleared patch of earth. A man pushes fallen brick away from a doorway, though the room behind it no longer has a roof. Children gather dry reeds into bundles, their movements uncertain, then increasingly purposeful. Human life returns quietly, with sore hands and very little ceremony. The land is not empty, it is wounded. Across the plain, settlements gather themselves into shape once more. A repaired hearth sends smoke upward, a narrow canal is cleared with wooden spades. Seeds are separated from ruined stores and guarded like treasure. The people who remain cannot live forever within the posture of survivors. Hunger insists upon planning, shelter insists upon building, fields insist upon water directed through channels rather than left wandering in pools. Then the tablet delivers its strange reassurance. Kingship is brought down from heaven again. The statement is calm, almost formal, as though celestial authority has waited above the soaked plain until a suitable place can receive it. The first city chosen in this restored human order is Kish. Its name enters the royal sequence with fresh gravity. Authority has not vanished into the storm, it returns, but the world receiving it feels altered. The immeasurable reigns of sacred beginnings give way gradually to rulers who seem closer to the reach of human memory, human violence, and human ambition. You travel northward across the river plain, following paths pressed into drying earth. Kish lies where routes converge, within a region positioned to command trade, movement, and communication among competing settlements. Its power does not arise only from sacred prestige. Its location matters. Grain, livestock, pottery, timber brought from distant regions, and travellers carrying rumours all move through a world becoming connected again. Excavations at Kish reveal that it was a major urban centre during the early centuries of Sumerian political life. Archaeologists recovered monumental buildings, administrative traces, graves, pottery, and evidence of a community capable of supporting organised authority. Clay remains do not announce that heaven selected the city. They reveal the earthly structure capable of sustaining such a claim: labour, storage, households, craft production, ceremony, and control over vital routes. Near the edge of the city, you hear mallets striking damp brick into moulds. Rows of fresh blocks lie beneath sunlight, each one holding the promise of walls not yet built. A worker kneels to smooth a rough edge, then discovers the print of a dog's paw crossing the surface. He stares at it for a moment, mutters with justified disappointment, and places the brick aside. Even the rebuilding of sacred order must occasionally yield to an animal with poor respect for urban planning. Kish smells of clay dust, bread ovens, animal pens, and smoke from fires where fish are roasted beside onions. New walls rise steadily, storehouses fill in careful stages, people measure barley into jars, repair nets, and bind reeds into roofing mats. At a central building, officials collect provisions and mark obligations. A city recovering its strength must know who works, who owes grain, who receives food, and who has somehow avoided carrying bricks for several days while appearing extremely busy. A ruler in Kish faces a different task from the distant kings of sacred age. He rules among people who understand loss. He cannot simply stand as an ornament of divine order while fields remain choked with silt. He must assign labour for canals, settle claims over damaged land, secure food supplies, maintain shrines, and defend a settlement whose restored wealth will attract neighbours with flexible opinions about ownership. His throne is not merely a sign of survival, it is a tool of recovery. The Sumerian King List names many rulers of Kish, some difficult to connect with independent evidence, others surrounded by legend. Their reigns remain large in places, yet the atmosphere has changed. These rulers belong to cities that compete, rise, weaken, and lose authority. Kingship no longer seems fixed within a golden world untouched by change. It travels. One city receives the sacred office, then another takes it when the balance of power turns. Among the rulers of Kish appears Etana, called a shepherd and remembered as one who rose into heaven. His story offers a peculiar glimpse into royal longing. In a later tale, Etana lacks an heir and seeks the plant of birth, a mysterious remedy that might secure succession. He rescues an eagle trapped in a pit, and the grateful creature carries him upward in search of what he needs. You feel the ground fall away as the story lifts him into the air. Fields shrink into patterned squares, canals become shining threads, temple platforms become small raised shapes within crowded settlements. The eagle climbs higher. While Etana looks down upon the earth he hopes his child will one day govern. It is a beautifully strange royal journey, combining desperation, flight, parenthood, and the very sensible fear that a dynasty without an heir may soon become a polite memory. No inscription proves that a historical king physically travelled through the sky upon an eagle, yet the tale says something intimate about restored kingship. A ruler does not simply receive divine favour and relax beneath it. He must secure continuity. He must make the fragile human office endure through children, succession, alliances, and the uncertain favour of powers whose intentions remain hidden. The title shepherd also matters. A king may command walls, soldiers, and labour crews, yet he is praised as one who guides living beings through danger and confusion. Sheep do not feed themselves neatly, nor do citizens. Both wander, resist, require protection, and create surprising difficulties near water. The image softens royal force while quietly justifying it. A shepherd carries a staff because care and control have always been close companions. Researchers continue to debate whether the dominance assigned to Kish reflects an actual early political supremacy, a prestigious memory claimed by later rulers, or a literary scheme that arranges competing cities into a single transfer of legitimate rule. Many later kings, even those ruling elsewhere, prized the title King of Kish. The name had become more than geography. It suggested authority broad enough to reach beyond one city's walls. Dusk settles over newly repaired roofs. A temple lamp glows above a courtyard where offerings have returned. Bread, beer, dates, perhaps a small portion of fish laid carefully upon a dish. Nearby, the ruler's officials inspect stores and count baskets. Sacred duty and practical accounting breathe beneath the same roof again. You stand where the ground is still cracked from drying water. The city does not appear innocent. It has learned that order can be removed, that walls can dissolve, that sacred protection does not spare every household. Yet it builds, it plants, it gives authority another seat among human beings. Kingship has come down again, not into untouched perfection, but into a land marked by loss. Its renewed promise is quieter now. Heaven may permit rule. The king may preserve order. The people may return to their fields. And beneath every new brick, the earth remembers how easily a kingdom can become mud. Dawn enters the temple courtyard through a veil of fine dust. The first light touches plastered walls, reed baskets, water jars, and a row of shallow bowls waiting beside the kitchen doorway. You hear the scrape of a broom upon packed earth. Someone clears yesterday's ashes from a hearth. Someone else carries fresh water carefully, because the first duty of the morning is not owed to a prince, an official, or a hungry household. It is owed to the god. The sanctuary is understood as a dwelling place, not simply a hall where people gather to speak prayers. Somewhere deeper within its rooms stands the sacred presence of the divine owner, sheltered from ordinary noise and ordinary eyes. The god has a bedchamber, garments, vessels, furniture, ornaments, and meals prepared with respectful precision. Bread is baked, beer is poured, meat may be cooked, perfumed oil is brought forward. Music may soften the moment of presentation. A divine household requires excellent service. You follow a servant through a narrow passage, where the air grows cooler and carries the scents of flour, smoke, dates, and heated fat. The kitchen is already busy. Women shape dough into small loaves. A worker turns bread beside hot clay surfaces. Another checks a jar of beer, lifting its covering with the solemn expression of someone whose mourning may depend upon quality control. The food is not hurriedly prepared. It enters ritual space as an offering suitable for an immortal host. The meal passes through several hands. Nothing about its journey is casual. Portions must be counted, containers selected, surfaces cleaned, and attendants correctly placed. A priest lifts a dish and moves toward the sacred room. His steps become slower near the threshold. The courtyard chatter falls away. Within the innermost space, the god receives what the city has prepared. To a modern visitor, the scene may feel strange. A statue does not chew bread. A carved face does not drink beer. Yet for the people serving within this temple, the question would sound shallow. The sacred image is not treated as an idle decoration. It is the earthly form through which divine presence can be honoured, clothed, approached, and sustained. The offering acknowledges a relationship. The city eats because the god has permitted abundance. The god is served because human life remains dependent upon that permission. The temple does not only feed the divine presence, it feeds an institution. Behind the ceremonial rooms are storerooms with jars, baskets, wool, grain, oils, tools, and carefully managed supplies. Workers arrive with produce from temple lands. Shepherds deliver animals. Fishers present portions of their catch. Brewers, bakers, weavers, cleaners, musicians, gardeners, and scribes all contribute to the rhythm of sacred service. At one doorway, a clerk presses signs into damp clay, recording goods that enter and portions that leave. Reverence, when organised on a civic scale, produces a remarkable amount of paperwork. Clay tablets from ancient Mesopotamian cities preserve lists of rations, offerings, workers, animals, and commodities connected with major institutions. Such records confirm that sacred life rested upon the labour of real bodies and the movement of real food. The temple's splendour did not float above ordinary existence. It depended upon fields cut under hot sunlight, sheep driven through dust, jars carried against aching hips, and accountants quietly insisting that missing barley remains missing even when offered a religious explanation. You cross into a larger court where music begins. A lyre gives a low, delicate sound, followed by a singer whose voice remains calm and formal. Music is not an ornament here. It pleases the deity, shapes ceremony, and steadies the human beings permitted to stand near sacred power. At one side, an attendant burns resin. Thin smoke rises and folds into the sunlight, carrying sweetness through a space otherwise filled with clay, wool, and warm bread. Near the temple wall stands a small carved figure of a worshipper. Its hands are clasped together, its eyes are startlingly wide, as though sleep has never once managed to find it. Figures like this were placed within sanctuaries at sites such as Tel Asmar, where excavators uncovered groups of worshippers made from stone and gypsum. A statue could remain in prayer when its human donor had returned to business, family, sleep, or the practical difficulty of being present in a temple every hour of every day. There is something touching about that idea. A person places an image of himself before a god, hoping that devotion may continue even during absence. There is also something mildly enviable about it. The stone worshipper never becomes distracted, never complains that the hymn is longer than expected, and never remembers halfway through prayer that bread has been left too near the oven. A ruler participates in this sacred machinery with exceptional visibility. He supplies costly offerings, restores buildings, dedicates statues, funds rituals, and ensures that divine meals continue in proper dignity. His inscriptions may speak lovingly of constructing a god's dwelling or returning neglected ceremonies to their correct form. Such claims are devotional, but they are also public statements of fitness to rule. A city whose temples are beautifully maintained displays a ruler in favour with the divine owners of the land. You see him arriving in procession, not dressed for battle but for service. Attendants carry vessels ahead of him. Musicians mark his movement through the courtyard. The ruler approaches the sanctuary bearing gifts that represent more than private faith. He brings what the city has produced under his care. Grain becomes bread. Herds become offerings. Imported stone and metal become ornaments for the divine chamber. Human prosperity is presented back to its sacred source, while the king stands conveniently at the centre of the exchange. This is where the suspected agreement takes visible form. No treaty tablet lies open upon a table. No divine hand presses a seal beside a human signature. Instead, obligation is acted out repeatedly. The god receives food, music, clothing, incense, restoration, and honour. The king receives legitimacy, sacred nearness, and the public appearance of guarding divine favour. The people receive festivals, distribution, shared identity, and hope that proper service keeps disorder beyond the walls. The hope may not always have felt comforting. A temple household requires labour, and labour is rarely experienced as poetic by the person carrying the basket. A family supplying grain may wonder how generously the god truly eats. A worker repairing a ceremonial wall may glance toward his own leaking roof with thoughts too impolite for formal inscription. Sacred systems can inspire tenderness and resentment within the same afternoon. Historians continue to discuss how far temple institutions controlled the economy of early Sumerian cities, and how much power belonged to palaces, households, merchants, and local networks outside temple authority. The surviving tablets illuminate administration richly, yet they do not allow every voice to speak equally. The person receiving rations appears clearly in a list. His private opinion about the arrangement remains maddeningly absent. Night returns gradually, cooling the courtyard stones. The divine meal has been presented. Lamps flicker inside the sanctuary. The last musicians depart, carrying instruments wrapped against dust. A scribe stacks tablets carefully in a basket, preserving the day's account of grain, oil, flour, and service. Within the sacred room, the god remains attended. Outside, the city settles into darkness, trusting that offerings have been accepted, that order has been maintained, and that the unseen powers remain willing to inhabit their appointed house. For here, in the quiet movement between kitchen, storeroom, throne, and shrine, the divine relationship is no distant theory. It has bread beneath its cloth. It has smoke upon its ceiling. It has workers in its shadows. And every morning it must be served again. A wooden hoe enters hardened soil with a dry, stubborn crack. You feel the shock travel through your wrists, up your arms, and into your shoulders. The morning is still young, yet sweat already darkens the cloth at your back. Around you, other workers bend above the field, breaking clods, clearing weeds, guiding precious water toward rows of barley. The city is waking somewhere beyond the cultivated ground. Smoke rises from ovens. Donkeys complain beneath loaded baskets. A temple tower catches the sun upon its pale upper wall. From this distance, the sanctuary looks serene, almost weightless. It is easy to admire holy buildings when someone else is lifting the grain that keeps their storerooms full. You draw the hoe downward again. In Mesopotamian creation traditions, this burden is not an unfortunate accident of human life. It lies near the centre of why human beings exist at all. The question is quietly unsettling. What if humanity is not created first for wonder, companionship, or wisdom? What if people are shaped because there is work to be done, and the divine world has grown tired of doing it? A Sumerian composition known as Enki and Ninmah opens with the gods suffering beneath labour. They dig canals and pile up earth. Their work is difficult, their dissatisfaction unmistakable. The mother of Enki hears their complaint and urges her wise son to fashion a solution. From clay associated with the deep waters, a human form is created. This new being will carry the labour that weighs upon divine shoulders. The scene has a strange stillness. You do not see lightning tearing open the heavens. You do not hear triumphant music announcing humanity as the crown of creation. Instead, you imagine wet clay in careful hands. You hear weary gods asking for relief. The first human breath rises in a world where duty has already been prepared. A related tradition survives in the later Akkadian story of Atrahasis. There, junior gods have laboured painfully, digging waterways and maintaining the world required by the greater powers. Their exhaustion becomes rebellion. Tools are thrown aside. A divine household reaches a crisis that feels almost uncomfortably familiar. Eventually, humanity is created to carry the load. People are placed beneath the yoke of work once borne by gods. It is a grim beginning, though not entirely without dignity. The labour assigned to humanity is not meaningless. Canals feed fields. Fields support cities. Cities shelter music, writing, craft, ritual, children, bread, stories, and moments of laughter beside evening fires. Yet the foundation remains disturbing. Civilization grows from service. The beautifully ordered world rests upon countless bodies bending beneath tasks they did not choose. Your feet sink slightly into wet earth near the irrigation channel. A young man nearby lifts a basket of mud and stumbles beneath its weight. His companions laugh, then help him steady it. Their humour is gentle because everyone understands the basket will soon reach their own shoulders. Across the field, an older woman straightens her aching back and looks toward the temple stores, where some portion of this harvest will eventually travel. The University of Chicago's Oriental Institute, now known as the Institute for the Study of Ancient Cultures, has preserved and studied administrative tablets showing the immense organisation of labour in early Mesopotamia. Workers received barley, oil, wool, and other rations through institutional systems connected with temples and palaces. Clay records count people not as vague subjects, but as weavers, field hands, herders, millers, boat workers, and dependents whose survival was measured through allotments. The tablets are practical. They contain no mist of poetry around sore knees or blistered palms. A ration is issued, a quantity is measured, a name or group is marked. Yet through their quiet numbers, you sense the lives supporting the sacred city. The gods may dwell in perfumed chambers, and kings may appear beneath ceremonial robes, but ordinary humanity keeps the entire arrangement standing through repeated effort. In one workshop, wool is cleaned, spun, and woven beneath watchful supervision. Hands move steadily through fibres, day following day. In another place, grain is ground into flour, the stone turning with a rhythm that must enter dreams. Boatmen haul goods along waterways beneath bright heat. Brickmakers mix clay with straw, pressing the city into shape one heavy block at a time. No heavenly council appears to lift their burdens once the work begins. A modern fringe claim sometimes transforms these creation stories into an account of humans engineered by the Anunnaki for mining precious metals. In that telling, the fields and canals conceal a more secret purpose, and humanity becomes a manufactured workforce for visitors seeking earthly resources. It is a compelling image for those who prefer their ancient mysteries equipped with hidden laboratories. The surviving Mesopotamian texts, however, speak of a labour in far more familiar terms: digging, carrying, maintaining temples, or producing food, and serving divine order. That ordinary labour may be the more haunting idea. Gold mining would feel distant, almost theatrical. Bread making, ditch clearing, textile weaving as tiesemd, and carrying baskets belong to the daily world. They place the supposed divine arrangement within tired muscles and empty stomachs. They suggest that every humble necessity is not merely the consequence of living, but the purpose assigned to humanity by powers who desired rest. You enter a shaded yard where workers receive bowls of food at midday. Barley porridge cools quickly in the dry air. A little onion and oil make the meal more welcome. Conversation moves softly among the exhausted group. One man complains about a supervisor who measures bricks with an enthusiasm rarely observed in people moving bricks themselves. Someone laughs, a child arrives carrying water. For a brief time, the burden becomes shared rather than imposed. This is the tenderness the tablets cannot easily count. Human beings made to serve do more than serve. They form friendships while working. They sing while grinding grain. They tease the overseer once he's safely elsewhere. They carry an injured companion home. They shape small joys within a structure that may have been designed for obligation. Scholars continue to examine whether these myths mainly justified existing labour systems, expressed anxiety about social dependence, or explored deeper questions about suffering and divine responsibility. Were people told that work was sacred so that institutions could demand it more easily? Or did the stories acknowledge a truth everyone already felt? That survival itself requires painful effort. The clay provides many voices, though never a simple verdict. Late afternoon settles upon the fields. The irrigation water glows softly between banks of dark earth. Workers return toward the city, tools resting across shoulders, clothing dusted with soil. Their silhouettes pass beneath the temple wall, where smoke rises from an evening offering prepared for gods who do not carry hoes. You walk among them, hearing sandals scrape and tired voices drift through warming dusk. There is no rebellion in the street tonight, only endurance. Yet a question follows every footstep. Was the first human gift life itself, or was it usefulness? Perhaps humanity was shaped to ease a divine burden. Perhaps civilization is the elegant covering placed over that ancient demand. And perhaps, beneath every crown and every prayer, the oldest term of the agreement is the simplest one of all. Human hands must work. A young scribe sits cross-legged upon a reed mat, his knees dusted with flakes of drying clay. Before him lies a tablet no larger than his hand, still soft enough to receive mistakes and stern enough to preserve them. His stylus is cut from reed, angled carefully at the tip. Beside him, another boy recites signs in a low, weary murmur, repeating them until their shapes seem to float behind his eyes. The schoolroom smells of damp clay, warm bodies, lamp smoke, and nervous effort. A supervisor walks between the students, pausing whenever a sign leans badly or a line wanders downward with unacceptable freedom. Outside, the city moves through its daily errands. Inside, language is being trained into obedience. This is where divine obligation acquires a memory. A king may perform a ceremony once before a gathered crowd. A priest may raise offerings before a sacred image while incense curls into shadow. Yet without the scribe, those actions drift away with the smoke. Clay changes that. Clay keeps the gift, the prayer, the order, the temple repair, the divine favour, and the warning against anyone careless enough to disturb what has been established. You hear the soft pressure of reed against wet earth. Wedge by wedge, the invisible structure becomes durable. Scribes do not begin with royal mysteries. They begin with signs, lists, names, animals, plants, professions, vessels, places, and numbers. They copy until the hand remembers what the mind resists. Their education is demanding, because the institutions around them depend upon exactness. One jar of oil miscounted is troublesome. One field assignment recorded badly may become a quarrel. One offering omitted from a sacred account could look alarmingly like neglect. The ancient school tradition preserves a wonderfully human complaint from a student who struggles through his day. He rises early, takes his tablet, receives criticism, fears punishment, and tries desperately to please his teacher. His solution involves inviting the teacher home, providing food, drink, and gifts through his family. The teacher's opinion improves remarkably. Education, it seems, has always benefited from talent, discipline, and the occasional beautifully prepared dinner. Yet the trained scribe carries responsibilities far beyond schoolroom survival. He enters temple offices where grain deliveries are checked against tablets stacked in baskets. He records wool assigned to weavers, beer supplied for workers, animals designated for offerings, and land connected with sacred estates. His signs turn harvest into account, labour into obligation, and devotion into something that officials can inspect. You follow him through a shaded archive room. Tablets rest on shelves or within containers, grouped according to purpose. Some are fresh and pale, others have hardened into brown records of seasons already gone. A clerk reaches for one tablet while comparing a new delivery of barley. His finger traces an earlier amount. A supplier waits at the doorway, looking patient in the manner of a man privately hoping that the older record has become unreadable. It has not. The temple official guarding these records performs a quiet kind of power. He does not lead soldiers through gates. He does not wear the heavy ornaments of a ruler. Yet he knows what was promised, what was received, and what remains owed. His archive is a second memory for the institution, less forgiving than personal recollection and much more difficult to charm. Within the sacred world, words do not merely describe duties, they shape consequences. A ruler dedicating a building may order that his inscription remain protected within its foundation. He may call blessings upon anyone who honours the monument, and terrible punishment upon anyone who damages it, steals credit, changes the writing, or replaces the ruler's name with another. The gods become witnesses to a claim preserved in clay and brick. At Lagash, the ruler Gudea leaves an especially rich vision of such sacred responsibility. His long Sumerian composition celebrating the construction of Ningirsu's temple presents building as an act commanded through divine signs and completed through careful obedience. The temple rises as a house of radiance and power. Its completion confirms that the ruler has listened correctly, gathered materials faithfully, purified the city, and fulfilled the god's desire. You enter that imagined building site in the cool hour before sunrise. Workers prepare brick moulds. Reed baskets are set down near heaps of clay. Carpenters examine timber brought from lands far beyond the flat southern plain. Metalworkers tend furnaces whose glow pulses against dark walls. No single labourer sees the entire sacred design. Each carries one portion of it, guided by overseers, officials, priests, and written instructions. At the centre stands the royal claim, the god has desired a house, and the ruler has delivered it. A scribe records this achievement not as a casual building report, but as a sacred sequence of command, preparation, purity, abundance, and divine satisfaction. The words transform labour into fulfilment of destiny. Bricks cease to be only bricks. Cedar ceases to be merely imported wood. A completed doorway becomes evidence that king and god remain aligned, that the city still occupies a protected place within the order of things. This language resembles the clauses of an agreement without ever becoming a signed treaty. The god reveals or requires. The ruler obeys and supplies. The temple officials maintain regular service. The scribes preserve proof that duty has been performed. Blessing follows proper conduct. Disaster threatens neglect, arrogance, or violation. The system is elegant because it can be repeated endlessly. A ruler repairs a sanctuary and earns praise. A successor restores what time has damaged and earns fresh praise. An official records offerings and supports the continuity of sacred care. A student learns the signs that allow the whole arrangement to pass beyond one lifetime. The gods do not need to descend visibly into every courtyard. Their terms remain active through people trained to remember them. A curious possibility hides inside every archive. Not all tablets are intended to be read immediately. Foundation inscriptions may be buried within buildings, placed where ordinary citizens never see them. Their audience includes future rulers, future builders, and the divine powers believed capable of knowing what lies concealed below floors and walls. Writing is therefore directed not only across distance, but downward into darkness, trusting that clay can wait patiently for centuries. Scholars still debate how fully scribal language represents widespread belief rather than the polished voice of temples and royal administrations. A hymn may tell you how power wished to be understood, without revealing what a fisherman muttered beside his nets or what a labourer believed while carrying brick. Yet administrative clay and sacred literature together show an undeniable pattern. Authority desired records, worship required continuity, kingship surrounded itself with language that connected service to favour and disobedience to danger. The schoolroom grows quiet as evening settles over the city. One student smooths the edge of his tablet with a damp finger. Another rubs away a crooked exercise and begins again, slightly less confidently than before. The supervisor gathers finished work, inspecting each effort beneath the fading light. Soon these children will become the hands behind decrees to hymns as ration lists, temple accounts, royal praise, and sacred warnings. They will not stand upon the throne. They will make the throne remember what it claims to owe heaven. The little tablet in the student's lap hardens slowly. Its marks are fragile now, easily erased by water or pressure. Once fired, dried, buried, and forgotten. They may outlast the building, the ruler, and the voice that first dictated them. A bargain does not always survive through signatures. Sometimes it survives through the patient hand that writes down who served, who received favour, and who was warned never to forget. A man stands at the edge of a crowded courtyard, turning a broken clay seal between his fingers. Dust has settled into the folds of his robe. Beside him, his older sister keeps one hand upon the shoulder of a frightened child. Across the open space waits another household, better dressed, supported by servants and confident enough to speak first. The dispute concerns a field. It is not a glorious subject for a royal audience. No enemy army presses at the gate. No sacred statue has vanished from its shrine. There is only soil, boundary markers, irrigation water, a dead father, and two families claiming the same portion of barley land. Yet to those standing under the heat of the morning, this field contains survival itself. Whoever loses may lose grain, status, security, and the future of a child who does not understand why adults have become so cold. At the far end of the courtyard, attendants draw back. The king enters beneath a shaded canopy. You notice that he does not arrive dressed like an ordinary judge. His presence is arranged carefully, made visible through fine wool, ornaments, staff, and ceremonial calm. Officials stand near him with tablets prepared for recording testimony. Temple representatives observe from one side. The matter is human, but judgment takes place beneath divine attention. The ruler is not merely deciding who possesses the field. He is showing where the sacred order can reach down into a quarrel over muddy earth. In the royal ideal of Sumer, the king stands between worlds. He receives favour from the gods, but he is expected to turn that favour outward as justice. He protects the widow from seizure, the orphan from exploitation, the poor from crushing demands, and the weaker household from the appetite of the strong. These promises appear repeatedly within Mesopotamian royal language, because a throne cannot live upon incense and praise alone. People need canals cleared, weights kept honest, violence restrained, and powerful neighbours prevented from quietly acquiring every useful patch of land. The king raises one hand. A witness begins speaking. His voice wavers at first, then steadies. He names an older boundary stone, an agreement made during a previous season, and the watercourse that divides one cultivated strip from another. A scribe presses signs into clay. Another witness is summoned. A tablet is produced, wrapped in cloth, bearing the trace of a transaction completed years earlier. Its surface is worn, but not silent. There is something almost comforting about clay at such a moment. Human memory bends easily under fear, kinship, hunger, or an attractive payment slipped into a willing hand. A tablet is not perfect, but it resists flattery. Its small wedges hold an older decision in place while living voices pull against it. During the reign of Ur-Namma, ruler of the city of Ur near the end of the 3rd millennium, before the Common Era, royal authority expressed itself through one of the earliest surviving collections of laws known from Mesopotamia. Fragments copied from ancient school traditions preserve provisions concerning injury, marriage, accusation, enslavement, and compensation. In its prologue, the ruler presents himself as a king who establishes fairness in the land and prevents the powerful from oppressing the vulnerable. You do not need to imagine that every court case unfolded exactly according to these written provisions. The existence of the collection reveals something more important for this quiet mystery. A king wished to be remembered not only as a builder of walls or provider of offerings, but as a guardian of measured justice. Sacred approval demanded visible consequences in ordinary life. The city of spreads beyond the court in a maze of houses, workshops, lanes, shrines, and storage rooms. Merchants weigh silver beside goods transported from distant lands. Families arrange marriages through agreements that protect property and inheritance. Farmers negotiate water access while watching clouds with suspicion. Servants, labourers, widows, creditors, debtors, boatmen, and shepherds all live within relationships capable of turning unfair very quickly. Justice is not an elegant decoration in such a city. It is maintenance. A dishonest scale takes bread from a household. A false accusation can remove a man from his place in the community. A powerful official who seizes land transforms sacred government into licensed theft. A creditor who demands endlessly from a desperate family can reduce human beings to possessions. The king who claims divine favour must appear able to restrain such dangers, or his sacred selection becomes a very expensive costume worn above public misery. Within hymns praising rulers of kings are described with language of shepherding, truth, righteousness, care, and divine calling. The image is gentle, though not soft. A shepherd guides, rescues, counts, separates, and sometimes strikes away danger with a staff. To be called shepherd of the people is to promise care while keeping command firmly in royal hands. The ruler in the courtyard listens as the wealthier household presents its argument. Its representative speaks smoothly, with the confidence of a man who has rehearsed beneath a cooler roof. He offers names of witnesses, claims of purchase, and a suggestion that the other family has misunderstood an arrangement made during mourning. The sister beside the child stiffens. Her brother lowers his gaze toward the broken seal still resting in his palm. The king turns toward the tablets. Perhaps this is where divine order feels closest to the poor, not during a distant procession, but during the silence before a decision. Perhaps it feels farthest away when the decision favours someone powerful, despite every prayer whispered through the night. No inscription records the inward weather of those waiting for justice. The official language prefers successful outcomes, grateful subjects, and rulers whose fairness shines reliably like sunlight. Real courtyards are probably less cooperative. A peculiar royal image survives from the reign of Gudea of Lagash. In several statues, the ruler sits or stands not, with a weapon raised triumphantly, but with his hands clasped in perpetual reverence. One seated statue holds upon his lap the plan of a temple, complete with measuring tools. It is an unexpectedly practical portrait of authority. The king is shown almost as an attentive manager of sacred design, a man prepared to measure walls correctly while remaining humble before the god. That measuring image belongs equally well to justice. A good king measures more than brick and foundation. He measures punishment against offence, payment against injury, duty against privilege, and human need against the demands of institutions. The measuring cord upon a royal lap becomes a quiet symbol of a world that must be kept from leaning too far toward those already strong. Some modern readers see in royal claims of divine appointment a hidden chain of command, suggesting that human rulers governed as earthly administrators for the Anunnaki themselves. In that interpretation, laws are not simply civic protections, but terms imposed upon a managed population. The tablets do not reveal secret administrative instructions from non-human masters, yet they do show kings presenting social order as something approved, demanded, and watched by divine powers. That alone is powerful. Scholars continue to debate how these early law collections functioned in practice. Some view them chiefly as statements of royal virtue, written to celebrate a ruler's ideal justice rather than guide every local decision. Others argue that they reflect genuine legal customs and categories familiar within courts and administration. A law tablet may be both ideal and practical, just as a king may sincerely value justice while enjoying the political benefits of being praised for it. At last, the court official reads the finding. The boundary is restored according to the older record. The field remains with the household of the child. No great cheer rises, for the setting is too solemn and the losing party too near. The sister closes her eyes briefly. Her brother presses the broken seal into his palm until its edge leaves a red mark. The king has done what a king is meant to do. Beyond the courtyard, sunlight touches canals and roofs. A baker opens an oven. A merchant adjusts his weights. A widow approaches an official with a petition held tightly against her chest. The city continues, still imperfect, still crowded with appetites and fear, yet for one small field, sacred authority has taken the form of protection rather than command. A ruler seated between earth and sky has justified his crown not through splendour, but through restraint. Perhaps that is the most demanding term placed upon any human king. He may receive power in the language of heaven. He must prove its worth among people who live close to the dust. A sheep stands quiet beside a stone platform, its breath pale in the cool air before sunrise. Around it, men gather in formal silence, their robes drawn close against the chill. Each represents a household, a province, or a powerful family whose loyalty matters to the ruler seated beyond the courtyard. Torches hiss in bronze holders. A priest holds a vessel of water. Another carries a tablet covered in tightly pressed writing. No one has gathered merely to hear pleasant promises. In ancient Mesopotamia, an oath is never only a matter of personal honour. Words spoken under oath are placed before divine witnesses. Powers believed capable of seeing beyond performance and punishing betrayal with terrifying exactness. A man may conceal false intentions from his ruler. He cannot easily hide them from a god whose authority reaches illness, famine, defeat, family, fields, and the quiet terror of dreams. The priest lifts his hand and the murmuring stops. The agreement concerns loyalty to a king and to the future he has chosen. The men assembled must swear that they will protect the appointed succession, reveal plots, resist rebellion, and refuse the seductive invitation to support another claimant. Their mouths will pronounce obedience. Their bodies will stand within sacred ceremony. Their descendants may be included in the obligation, because royal anxiety rarely confines itself politely to one generation. The clay tablet does not present loyalty as a warm feeling. It sets loyalty into conditions, centuries beyond the earliest Sumerian cities. The Assyrian king Esarhaddon required officials and subject rulers to swear allegiance to his chosen heir, Ashurbanipal. Copies of these succession treaties, written in 672 before the Common Era, were discovered at sites including Nimrud. Scholars at the University of Chicago have examined the texts as among the clearest surviving examples of political oath-making in the ancient Near East. They reveal an agreement guarded by an immense company of divine witnesses. The names gather across the tablet like a storm front. Anu, Lord of Heaven, stands among them. Enlil, powerful master of command, is invoked. E, known in Sumerian tradition as Enki, appears as Lord of Wisdom and Hidden Waters. Shamash watches over justice beneath the bright eye of the sun. Sin governs the moon. Ishtar bears her fierce authority of desire and battle. Other divine powers join the witnessing assembly until breaking the oath seems not merely dangerous, but cosmically foolish. You hear the words recited slowly. May the oathbreaker lose health. May confusion overtake his counsel. May his household fail. May his fields yield nothing. May his people rise against him. May his land become difficult to inhabit. May the gods strip away protection and expose him to enemies. The language is relentless because a treaty written for uncertain loyalty must frighten betrayal before betrayal learns to speak. In one ritual image preserved within these Assyrian treaty curses, an animal is used to show what may happen to anyone violating the oath. The meaning is not hidden behind delicate poetry. The fate enacted upon the animal becomes a visible warning to the human swearer. The ceremony turns consequence into something seen, heard, and remembered in the body. You look toward the sheep beside the platform and understand why the courtyard feels colder. This is not violence performed for spectacle alone. It is a lesson arranged for memory. A ruler cannot stand beside every governor, commander, or allied prince throughout their lives. He cannot inspect the private loyalties forming over evening meals, marriage alliances, whispered debts, and insulted pride. But he can require men to stand beneath the gaze of the gods and imagine their own ruin if they choose treachery. A sacred witness reaches where soldiers cannot. The same logic appears in quieter objects connected with land and inheritance. A boundary stone, sometimes called a kuduru in Babylonian tradition, might record a royal grant of property while displaying divine emblems across its upper surface: crescent moon, solar disk, horned crowns, serpent forms, and symbols of gods crowd above the written claim. Such a stone is not simply a marker saying that one field ends where another begins. It declares that the boundaries of ownership exist under supernatural observation. You stand beside one such marker at the edge of cultivated land. Barley stirs in a mild wind. An irrigation channel slips through the soil nearby, glistening between green stalks. A farmer places his palm upon the carved stone, not because it needs comforting, but because it represents his family's security. The words upon it protect a grant, an inheritance, a livelihood. The divine symbols warn any ambitious neighbour that moving the boundary is not merely theft. It is an insult noticed by powers with remarkably long memories. One cannot help admiring the efficiency of this arrangement. A stone that cannot walk, shout, or hire guards remains capable of making a land thief glance nervously at the sky. Bureaucracy rarely achieves such atmosphere in the modern world. These practices do not prove that Sumerian rulers signed a literal treaty with the Anunnaki. Human agreements are being placed before gods as witnesses, not presented as negotiations conducted face-to-face between heavenly councils and earthly kings. Yet the structure is revealing. Mesopotamian society understands obligation through a sacred pattern. Authority grants, subjects swear, gods witness, blessings preserve loyalty, and curses await violation. A king who receives fidelity from others is also caught within the same web. He may grant land unjustly, neglect divine temples, seize what belongs to the sacred domain, or fail in duties that support order. His inscriptions frequently ask later rulers not to erase his name, damage his works, or steal the honour due to him. Those who violate his foundations are threatened with divine punishment, yet every curse he places upon future hands quietly admits that his achievements depend upon divine protection, not royal strength alone. In palace rooms, scribes prepare copies of oaths with careful signs. The tablet must name the parties, the obligations, the divine witnesses, and the consequences. Words are shaped not to drift like speech, but to remain ready for judgment. A clay agreement can be stored, consulted, copied, buried, carried to distant officials, or placed within a sacred environment where the gods are presumed to know its contents perfectly. A strange detail gives this solemn practice a human edge. Some treaties demand loyalty not only against open rebellion, but against secret conversations, concealed knowledge, and failure to report dangerous words. The king fears silence almost as much as weapons. He knows that betrayal begins quietly, perhaps in a comfortable room where wine has softened caution, and someone says, very casually, that another prince might be easier to serve. Scholars debate how much such oath ceremonies inspired sincere devotion, and how much they compelled outward compliance through fear. A governor might tremble before divine curses, or he might calculate political chances while repeating every required line. Belief and strategy can occupy the same heart without asking permission from one another. The ceremony works because neither possibility can be safely ignored. The sun rises over the courtyard. Torch flames fade in its clearer light, one by one. The assembled men speak their oath, voices steady or strained according to the secrets they carry. The tablet receives their loyalty in written form. The gods receive it as witnesses. The king receives what reassurance power can obtain, which is never quite enough. Beyond the palace, fields await water and merchants open their storerooms. A boundary stone holds its place beneath the growing heat. Divine emblems stare from its surface, weathered yet watchful. An agreement in this world is never alone. It is surrounded by gods, sealed by fear, and followed by the quiet possibility that one broken promise may summon consequences no human ruler can call back. A museum storeroom lies behind a locked door, far from the graceful objects displayed beneath perfect lighting. Here, clay tablets rest in trays, boxes, drawers, and padded cabinets. Some are whole enough to hold comfortably in one hand. Others survive as broken corners, scorched pieces, or fragments no larger than a thumbnail. Their surfaces are crowded with signs pressed by people who expected their words to matter. You enter quietly with a curator carrying a small lamp. Dust has no place to gather upon carefully protected objects. Yet the room still seems filled with the scent of earth. Each tablet has been removed from a buried city, cleaned, numbered, examined, photographed, copied, translated, questioned, and questioned again. The atmosphere feels less like a treasure vault than a room of interrupted voices. Some tablets record barley, some list sheep, some preserve hymns, school exercises, property transfers, legal decisions, royal praise, medical recipes, omens, laments, prayers, and letters between worried human beings. Some invoke gods as witnesses. Some name kings beloved by divine powers. Some describe humanity shaped for labour. Some place kingship beneath heavenly authority. Yet no tablet in these drawers records the document imagined by so many modern stories. There is no surviving Sumerian agreement in which the Anunnaki sit opposite human kings and negotiate terms. There is no list of promises exchanged between divine rulers and earthly monarchs. No clause states that humanity will provide labour in return for protection. No seal impression identifies a god as a contracting party beside a king's mark. No ancient scribe titles a composition, in solemn wedges, as the treaty between the Anunnaki and the kings of men. The silence is clear. You might expect that silence to empty the mystery from the room. Instead, it changes its shape. A missing document does not mean the ancient people lacked ideas about divine obligation. It means their ideas were not expressed in the modern form that later imagination wishes to find. The old world did not require every sacred relationship to appear as a legal contract. A bond could be understood through ritual, kingship, offerings, punishment, blessing, and the repeated claim that the gods had placed order in human hands. The curator lifts a tablet fragment beneath the light. Its signs are tiny, disciplined, and beautiful in a way that asks patience rather than excitement. A translator may spend years studying the grammar, comparing damaged copies, testing uncertain readings, and resisting the temptation to force a desired story into a broken line. Ancient clay does not surrender gracefully to impatient certainty. It can be generous, but it is never easily impressed by enthusiasm. During the 20th century, Samuel Noah Kramer, a scholar closely associated with the University of Pennsylvania, helped bring Sumerian literature into wider understanding through the study of tablets scattered among museum collections. His work revealed poems, myths, hymns, laments, disputes, and royal traditions whose voices had remained buried or unread for millennia. The material he studied gave the modern world a richer view of Sumerian religion and kingship. It did not reveal a hidden treaty between divine beings and human rulers. That matters because genuine discovery already has sufficient wonder. A damaged tablet containing a forgotten hymn does not need a secret empire added to it before it becomes extraordinary. A list of impossible kings does not become dull merely because it cannot prove visitors from the stars. A sacred assembly of gods, believed to judge destiny and authorize rulers, is strange enough to deserve quiet attention. You walk beside rows of tablets marked with museum numbers. Each number protects an object's identity within the modern archive, though the ancient text may tell a far grander story. One fragment may preserve a line praising a ruler as shepherd of the people. Another may contain an invocation asking a god to strengthen a throne. A third may threaten curses upon anyone who removes a boundary marker or erases a royal name. Separately, none is a treaty between heaven and a king. Together they reveal a world saturated with obligation. The distinction is gentle, but essential. A treaty is a particular kind of document. It normally identifies parties, conditions, witnesses, promises, penalties, and the circumstances under which the agreement stands. Mesopotamian scribes knew how to preserve such formal arrangements among human rulers and subject states. They recorded oaths, land grants, legal decisions, marriage arrangements, sales, loans, and royal decrees. They were perfectly capable of writing terms when terms needed writing. If a formal divine royal treaty had been preserved, scholars would not need to hint mysteriously around it. Its signs would be copied, translated, debated, and placed beside comparable texts. Museums would display it with deserved pride. Historians would argue about every damaged phrase, because historians can transform even a missing verb into several decades of polite disagreement. Instead, the alleged treaty remains an interpretation built from themes found across different compositions. Heaven grants kingship. Gods receive service. Rulers maintain temples and order. Humanity labours. Divine anger can overturn security. Blessing follows faithful duty within sacred imagination. These themes can resemble clauses when viewed together, yet resemblance is not the same as a signed agreement. A tablet lies before you bearing only a portion of a composition. Half its surface has broken away. Along the edge, sentences stop suddenly where the clay has vanished. You feel an almost physical desire to complete them. The missing space invites stories. Perhaps it contained the decisive line. Perhaps there, in the absent portion, the gods revealed everything. This feeling is powerful because human minds dislike an unfinished pattern. A fringe tidbit often repeated in modern discussions claims that museum vaults conceal complete translations, proving that the Anunnaki ruled human kingdoms through secret contractual arrangements. The idea turns curators and linguists into guardians of forbidden knowledge, which is certainly more exciting than cataloguing fragments and comparing sign forms under fluorescent lamps. Yet no credible record supports the existence of such a concealed treaty. The surviving tablets are difficult enough without inventing hidden ones. Still, a question remains beneath the correction. Why does the treaty idea feel so persuasive to many listeners? Perhaps because the ancient system appears contractual even without a document. A king presents offerings and obedience he expects favour, victory, long reign, abundance, and a lasting name. A city serves its divine patron. It hopes for protection. Human beings work within a world said to have assigned them labour. When calamity comes, the failure is interpreted not only as misfortune, but as damaged relationship. The terms are everywhere, even if they are nowhere written together. Scholars continue to debate how ordinary Mesopotamians understood this sacred structure. Royal texts present divine selection confidently, but palace and temple writings cannot reveal every private belief. A farmer might accept the gods completely, while distrusting the king who claimed their favour. A widow might pray earnestly in a shrine while wondering why justice moved so slowly. A worker might carry bricks for a sanctuary and feel both devotion and exhaustion beneath the same sun. You remain in the storeroom as the lamp is lowered. The tablets return to their trays one by one, small earthbound witnesses refusing both easy disbelief and easy fantasy. No signature of an Anunnaki god waits beneath a royal seal. No secret covenant opens its clauses to modern eyes. What remains is quieter and perhaps more unsettling. A civilization once believed that rule descended from powers beyond humanity, that labour answered sacred purpose, and that kings stood inside obligations they could never entirely control. The treaty may not exist as an object of clay, yet the people lived as though its condition surrounded them. A long table stands inside a quiet tablet room at Nippur, its surface covered with fragments of clay. Some pieces are pale brown, others darkened by fire or long burial in damp soil. One preserves the ending of a line, another holds the beginning of a divine name, a third carries only 3 wedges and the ghost of a border. To an impatient eye, the table contains rubble. To the training scribe, it contains a world waiting to be arranged. You stand beside him as he moves one fragment closer to another. There is no single tablet large enough to explain the entire sacred order. That is the first lesson carried by the broken clay. The meaning lies scattered among different kinds of writing, composed for different purposes and preserved by different accidents of earth. A royal list remembers cities and rulers. A hymn praises the dwelling of a god. A flood tale speaks of destruction and one obedient survivor. An inscription declares that a ruler built, restored, purified, or received divine favour. Each text seems separate, yet when their voices are heard together, something begins to take shape. The King List gives the first principle. Authority belongs to heaven before it rests upon earth. A ruler may sit upon a throne, but the office is greater than the body seated there. It can enter a city, depart from it, and appear elsewhere when fortune changes. The human king becomes a holder of power, not its final source. A temple hymn offers another portion of the pattern. In the collection preserved and studied through Oxford scholarship, sacred buildings are praised as places where divine powers gather, where decisions are established, where the gods dine, and where splendour radiates into the human settlement. A temple is not described as decoration beside government. It is presented as a point where the structure of the world becomes visible. You look at a fragment containing signs for house, city, and divine power. The words are incomplete, yet the atmosphere surrounding them feels whole. The temple is a doorway of order. Its platform lifts above the roofs. Its ceremonies organize time, and its presence tells every passerby that the city lives under powers older than its walls. Another tablet speaks in the language of catastrophe. A flood sweeps through the sequence of ancient rule. Human security is broken not simply because a river rises, but because divine decision has turned against the inhabited world. A ruler who listens is preserved. Life continues through obedience, sacrifice, and renewed divine favour. Placed beside the King List, the flood story suggests a second principle. Sacred authority may establish civilization, yet it may also withdraw protection. The gift of order is not unconditional. A city can possess walls, shrines, officials, fields, and royal titles. Then discover that none of these can command mercy. Your fingers hover above a tablet bearing royal praise. In its carefully arranged lines, a ruler speaks of building for a god, making a sacred house magnificent, restoring rights, and carrying out divine instruction faithfully. He does not claim that his finest project began as a pleasant personal idea. The work is described as service required by heaven and completed through human effort. There is the third principle. The king proves his legitimacy by performing obligations. He builds, he offers, he purifies, he protects, he establishes justice, he keeps the sacred household functioning and the human city aligned beneath it. His monuments become public evidence that he understands what has been asked of him. A ruler careless toward the gods would not merely be impious. He would appear dangerously unqualified to hold the office entrusted to him. A lamp flame bends as someone opens a door at the far end of the room. A breeze passes over the clay, stirring a loose scrap of linen. The scribe catches it with irritation, then returns to his arrangement. He has placed several tablets in a loose circle, not because ancient texts were stored this way, but because he wants to see their ideas facing one another. At one point rests divine grant, at another rests human labour, at another rests royal service, at another rests blessing, at another rests destruction, at another rests restoration. No tablet calls these items clauses. Still, their relationship is difficult to ignore. The sacred political system of Mesopotamia appears not through a single declaration, but through recurring expectations spread across genres. The stories differ, the rulers change, and the divine names shift according to city and age. The pattern remains recognizable. Humans inhabit an order believed to be established, watched, and judged by gods. The El Babylonian collection preserves tens of thousands of objects from ancient Mesopotamia, including hymns, administrative records, school exercises, legal writings, letters, and religious compositions. Collections like this reveal how many types of clay writing once existed side by side. A scribe accounting for barley and a poet praising divine kingship may appear to inhabit separate worlds. In reality, the barley supports the temple blesses the city, the ruler guards the temple, and the poem explains why that arrangement matters. The sacred system is not hidden because it is secret. It is hidden because it is ordinary. It lives in the ration bowl given to a worker. It lives in the foundation deposit beneath a temple wall. It lives in a ruler's prayer for long reign, and in a curse directed toward anyone who removes his name. It lives in the expectation that prosperity signals harmony, while defeat announces that some bond has weakened or failed. A peculiar modern notion claims that such fragments must once have formed a lost master tablet, a complete celestial charter, deliberately broken or concealed by later priesthoods. It is an attractive idea, offering the pleasure of imagining one missing object that would explain every silence. Yet ancient societies rarely preserve their deepest beliefs in one convenient document. They breathe them into ritual, architecture, story, law, titles, and daily habit. The absence of a master tablet may not be a loss. It may be evidence that the arrangement was too widely assumed to require one. You listen to the scribe reading short passages aloud. The sounds overlap softly in the chamber. A city receives kingship. A god inhabits a magnificent house. A king restores sacred rites. A flood silences the land. A survivor bows beneath sunlight. A ruler seeks justice for his people. Each line carries only part of the design, like tiles lifted from a floor whose full image can no longer be seen. Scholars still disagree about how deliberately these writings were brought into a unified ideology. Some suggest that royal courts and scribble schools shaped older traditions into a coherent vision of legitimate rule. Others emphasize the variety of local beliefs, changing through centuries, resisting any single system imposed upon them. The evidence permits both order and complexity. Ancient Mesopotamia speaks with many voices, though several of those voices seem drawn toward the same solemn arrangement. Night deepens outside the tablet room. The city beyond the walls is quiet, its streets emptied of merchants and petitioners. Inside, the clay pieces remain spread across the table beneath a pool of golden lamplight. Their cracks do not vanish. Their missing words do not return. No miraculous joining seals them into one perfect revelation. Yet the fragments have begun to resemble a design, not a treaty signed in a divine court, but a structure of expectations pressed across generations. The gods establish, the king serves, humanity labours, the city prospers or trembles beneath the balance, and perhaps the most powerful agreement is the one never written in full, because everyone living within its shadow already knows the terms. Rain touches the window of a modern bookshop, making the glass shimmer beneath electric light. You stand among shelves devoted to lost worlds, ancient mysteries, forbidden archaeology, and civilizations said to have known more than they should. The air smells of paper, coffee, and wet coats. somewhere. A quiet speaker plays music designed to make any ordinary purchase feel like the first step toward revelation. A book rests open upon a table. Its pages show cylinder seals, stars, winged figures, planets, temples, and translations presented with confident certainty. The message is simple enough to follow in one sleepy glance. The gods of Mesopotamia were not gods at all, but visitors from another world. The Anunnaki came to Earth in remote antiquity. They desired resources. They altered early humanity into a labouring species. They appointed rulers, guided cities, and left traces of their involvement upon clay tablets misunderstood by cautious scholars. The idea settles easily into the imagination because it offers a dramatic answer to every ancient silence. Impossible reigns become extended biological lives. Divine flight becomes spacecraft. Sacred knowledge becomes advanced technology. Creation myths become laboratories. Offerings become tribute to foreign overlords. Kingship descending from heaven becomes administration imposed from above. Nothing remains uncertain for long. The modern form of this story owes much to Zecharia Sitchin, whose book The 12th Planet appeared in 1976. He proposed that a distant world called Nibiru approached the inner solar system on a long orbit, and that its inhabitants came to Earth in search of gold. Within his reconstruction, the Anunnaki created human beings through deliberate manipulation, placing them into service and influencing the beginnings of civilization. You can understand the appeal. It turns the cracked surface of clay into evidence of a hidden history. It offers rulers behind the rulers, plans behind mythology, and a secret mechanism beneath the oldest human questions. It also provides one particularly comforting thought. Perhaps civilization has always been confusing, because it was designed by visitors with very poor communication habits. The bookshop fades, and you find yourself in a tablet laboratory beneath brighter, less romantic light. Here the excitement is quieter. A fragment rests on foam padding. A specialist examines it through magnification, comparing each sign with copies from other tablets. Her desk holds grammars, sign lists, photographs, notes, and a small cup of tea that has clearly surrendered its warmth hours ago. This is where grand claims encounter grammar. In surviving Sumerian writings, the Anunna are divine beings within a Mesopotamian pantheon. They appear in hymns, myths, royal compositions, and scenes of divine assembly. Their roles vary across time and literary setting. They may praise a major god, participate in decisions, stand among the great divine powers, or appear within traditions concerning judgment and the world of the dead. The clay does not describe them as inhabitants of a wandering planet. It does not state that they mined gold from Earth. It does not present humanity as a biological experiment conducted by extraterrestrial engineers. It does not identify Nibiru as the homeworld of the Anunnaki. In Mesopotamian astronomical and religious usage, the term later associated with Nibiru concerns a celestial crossing or marked heavenly position, with meanings shaped by context rather than one secret planetary biography. This does not make the ancient writings dull, it makes them ancient. Their gods belong to a world of divine meals, sacred cities, cosmic rank, temple service, human suffering, and royal legitimacy. Their concerns are immediate and enormous at once. Why must people work? Why does order collapse? Why is one ruler favoured and another destroyed? Why do storms rise? Why do prayers sometimes seem answered, while entire cities still fall into grief? A visiting engineer with a mining schedule may actually narrow those questions. On another table lies the photograph of a famous seal impression. It shows a seated figure, an approaching worshipper, and celestial symbols above them. In popular retellings, such images are sometimes said to depict the solar system, complete with a hidden extra planet known only to ancient observers. Yet specialists studying Mesopotamian art identify these designs within a visual language of divine symbols, stars, worship, authority, and sacred presence. An image can be beautiful and cosmic without becoming a diagram for interplanetary travel. You look at the tiny carved forms and feel the temptation to see more. Human beings are excellent at finding patterns, especially patterns that flatter our suspicion that official explanations have missed something thrilling. A star beside a god becomes a planet. A horned crown becomes a helmet. A ceremonial object becomes a machine. Soon, a quiet seal used in ancient administration carries the weight of an entire secret history. The tablet specialist does not laugh at curiosity. She understands it. Curiosity brought the fragment onto her desk in the first place. Yet she knows that translation is a discipline of resistance. One must resist reading a hoped-for meaning into a damaged sign. One must resist turning metaphor into machinery merely because machinery feels more concrete. One must resist the comfortable claim that scholars conceal discoveries whenever the texts decline to support a preferred conclusion. The ancient language deserves that patience. A mainstream reading, supported by the careful work of Assyriologists and collections associated with institutions such as Oxford and the University of Pennsylvania, understands the Anunna as gods within Mesopotamian religion. Their authority is religious, literary, and political. Human kings connect themselves to divine favour because sacred approval strengthens rule. Creation stories connect humanity with labour because work, service, and dependence shape urban life. These interpretations arise from the language, context, and comparison of many texts rather than from one spectacular decoding. Still, the fringe reading reveals something about the modern heart. It reflects a feeling that powerful systems must have hidden architects. It imagines that human history cannot be entirely human, because human civilization seems too strange, too unequal, too burdened by labour, hierarchy, and obedience. Perhaps it feels easier to believe that outsiders designed the arrangement than to accept that people themselves built systems capable of beauty and exhaustion together. Scholars continue to discuss how modern ancient visitor theories reshape the public understanding of Mesopotamia. Some see them as harmless, imaginative gateways that awaken interest in old cultures. Others warn that they replace the actual achievements of early peoples with stories crediting unseen outsiders. The question is not whether mystery should be allowed. Mystery belongs here naturally. The question is whether wonder can remain honest. The rain has stopped outside the bookshop. The pavement reflects street lamps in long amber pools. You close the open volume gently, neither angry nor disappointed. Its story has carried you toward clay, and the clay has answered in its own quieter voice. No hidden fleet appears among the reeds. No star-born overseer steps from a tablet to claim the crown. The Anunna remain ancient gods, immense within belief, woven through the fears and hopes of people who built cities beneath uncertain skies. And perhaps the more unsettling thought is not that strangers ruled humanity from above. Perhaps it is that human kings needed no visitors at all to place their power beneath heaven. A bronze helmet rests upon a low stand inside a palace chamber, its surface catching the wavering flame of several lamps. The metal has been polished until it glows like dark honey. Beside it lies a bow, a ceremonial axe, and a garment dyed with costly colour. Beyond the doorway, officials wait with their tablets, soldiers wait with their spears, envoys wait with guarded expressions and gifts chosen to look generous without appearing desperate. At the centre of this carefully arranged world stands a king who possesses nearly everything power can seize. He has cities beneath his command. He has tribute brought from distant roads. He has scribes prepared to record victory in signs meant to outlive ordinary memory. Yet none of these things can guarantee that men will remain loyal tomorrow. Strength wins obedience for a season. Fear holds a gate until another army appears. Wealth buys allies until a richer offer travels quietly through the night. A throne needs something more durable than success. In the age of the Akkadian Empire more than 4,000 years ago, a ruler named Naram-Sin carried royal authority into a new and startling register. He inherited an empire established through conquest, reaching across much of Mesopotamia and into neighbouring lands. His inscription celebrated military victories and the submission of cities. Yet his royal image did not remain merely that of a successful human sovereign. During his reign, he was honoured with divine status, and his name could be written with the sign marking a god. You feel the stillness of that decision. A king favoured by gods is one thing. A king presented among the divine realm is another. The distance between palace and heaven suddenly narrows until it becomes almost difficult to see where one ends and the other begins. The famous victory monument of Naram-Sin, preserved in the Louvre Museum, shows him climbing a mountainside above defeated enemies. His body is larger than the figures surrounding him. He wears a horned helmet, the visual sign normally associated with divinity in Mesopotamian art. Above him, heavenly symbols shine over the ascending path. He does not simply stand at the front of an army. He rises through the composition itself, elevated toward the realm from which authority is believed to flow. You stand upon that carved mountainside in imagination. Rock presses beneath your feet. Fallen shields lie among sharp stones. Soldiers lift their faces toward the king advancing higher than any of them. The air is thin, bright, and unnervingly still. Naram-Sin carries his bow with composure, as though victory has become his natural climate. The entire image speaks gently but firmly. This ruler does not merely possess power. Power has taken sacred form in him. Such imagery is not vanity alone, although vanity is certainly never far from royal portraiture. An empire assembled from numerous cities, languages, local loyalties, and memories of independence is a difficult creature to keep obedient. Rebellion may begin whenever a governor senses weakness, whenever harvests fail, whenever troops grow tired, or whenever a neighbouring ruler offers encouragement with a suitable quantity of silver. The king must therefore become larger than the quarrels beneath him. If he is only a conqueror, another conqueror may replace him. If he is the chosen axis of divine order, rebellion becomes more than political resistance. It becomes defiance against the structure of the world. A sacred king turns disobedience into danger for the soul, the city, and the harvest. This may not prevent every revolt, but it certainly improves the atmosphere at loyalty ceremonies. At the palace gate, messengers arrive bearing news from unsettled territories. A provincial city delays tribute. A commander reports unrest among labourers. A temple official requests confirmation that offerings will continue despite military demands. The king cannot answer every anxiety with soldiers. Armies consume grain, require payment, and sometimes develop ambitions of their own. He needs priests to bless his rule, scribes to describe his victories, and ceremonies to persuade anxious cities that stability still has divine approval. Royal power is not a stone wall. It is a fabric held together by belief, food, fear, habit, ceremony, and the constant prevention of unravelling. A curious detail surrounds the divinization of Naram-Sin. An inscription states that the people of his capital requested his elevation after he defended them against a great rebellion. The image is convenient and revealing. Divine kingship is presented not as the ruler simply announcing his own holiness over breakfast, but as gratitude rising from a protected city. The people themselves appear to ask that their victorious king be placed among the gods. Perhaps some truly felt that relief. A city spared from destruction may see holiness in the man who preserves it. Perhaps officials understood that divine language strengthened the regime. Perhaps both feelings existed together, as they often do when gratitude and political usefulness share the same courtyard. Then the mood changes. The later literary work known as the Curse of Agad remembers Naram-Sin through a darker sacred lens. In this composition, divine favour is withdrawn from his city. The ruler seeks an omen and receives no reassuring answer. In frustration, he attacks the temple of Enlil at Nippur, violating the sacred centre associated with supreme authority. Disaster follows. Foreign enemies descend. Order breaks apart. Hunger enters the land, and the splendid city suffers abandonment and ruin. The poem is not a simple report written by an eyewitness during the collapse of the empire. It is a literary meditation, preserved through tablets copied by scribes in a later age. Yale University collections include tablets associated with the educational world in which compositions of this kind were studied and transmitted. The tale transforms political disaster into a lesson about the fatal limits of royal ambition. The king who reached toward divinity discovers that he is still vulnerable to divine anger. There is a quiet irony in this. Sacred approval can make a ruler appear unassailable, but it can also explain his destruction with merciless force. When the empire expands, the gods favour him. When the capital suffers, the gods have turned away. Heaven legitimizes success, then stands ready to judge failure. The crown is strengthened by sacred language, yet the same language places a blade above it. A fringe reading sometimes sees Naram-Sin's horned helmet as proof that certain rulers were not human, but descendants or agents of non-human Anunnaki masters. The carved image, however, fits the established visual vocabulary of Mesopotamian divine authority. It tells you that a ruler claimed sacred elevation. It does not tell you that his blood belonged to another world. The human explanation is sufficiently unsettling. A mortal king, surrounded by uncertainty, learns that ordinary authority cannot satisfy the needs of empire. He reaches upward, clothes conquest in divine radiance, and teaches distant subjects to see obedience as participation in cosmic order. Scholars continue to debate how widely royal divinization was accepted beyond court and temple institutions. Did labourers, merchants, soldiers, and villagers truly regard the king as divine? Did they perform the expected rituals while privately measuring him by taxes, peace, and full granaries? Clay records preserve official claims more readily than private hesitation. A hymn survives. A sarcastic market whisper usually does not. Night settles upon the palace. The bronze helmet remains upon its stand, horned, gleaming, and empty. Outside, guards change post beneath the stars. In distant cities, officials read royal orders aloud. At shrines, priests speak names of gods, including perhaps the name of the king who's entered their company. Heaven has made the throne look permanent. Yet beneath the helmet waits a human head, vulnerable to error, pride, revolt, hunger, and the slow judgment of those who must live under his command. Power seeks divine approval because earthly loyalty is fragile. A city may bow today and rebel tomorrow. An army may cheer victory and abandon a losing king. A monument may show a ruler climbing forever toward the stars, while his capital returns patiently to dust. A barley field bends beneath the evening wind, each stalk brushed with the colour of old gold. You stand beside a narrow irrigation channel, where the water carries fragments of straw and the reflected fire of sunset. Across the plain, voices rise from harvest crews finishing their measured work. Sickles flash briefly, baskets fill, dust clings to arms, hair, and the edges of tired smiles. The harvest has come. For the households scattered around the city, this is more than a pleasant change in season. Grain means bread in sealed jars, beer in cooling vessels, rations for workers, offerings for sanctuaries, seed for planting, and a small breathing space between the family and hunger. The field is not an idea. It is supper, security, debt, duty, and hope standing upright upon thin green stems. A man lifts a handful of barley and lets it run through his fingers. He gives thanks quietly, not because he imagines that his own labour has been unimportant. His back is quite prepared to testify otherwise. Yet he lives in a world where human effort is never enough by itself. Water must arrive. Disease must pass by. Insects must be merciful. Officials must not demand too much. Enemies must remain elsewhere. The gods must permit the season to complete itself. This is the bargain as ordinary people may have felt it. Order in return for obedience. Protection in return for service. Abundance in return for offerings, labour, ritual care, taxes, loyalty, an acceptance of a king who claims that the city flourishes because heaven has placed him over it. There is no need for a secret tablet when the exchange appears in every filled basket. Near the field, a supervisor counts loads entering a storage yard. A scribe sits beneath a woven shade, pressing figures into damp clay as grain is delivered. The work crew receives portions. The sanctuary receives its appointed share. The palace stores what supports administration, building projects, festivals, messengers, and soldiers. A farmer watching his harvest disappear into several directions may understand sacred order perfectly well, while still wishing sacred order had a slightly smaller appetite. The city of Ur knew this arrangement with particular intensity during the rule of its powerful dynasty near the end of the 3rd millennium before the Common Era. Under kings such as Ur-Nama and Shulgi, administration reached across a broad territory through officials, messengers, accounting systems, taxation, labour assignments, and religious institutions. Tablets preserved in collections connected with the University of Pennsylvania reveal an astonishing flow of grain, animals, textiles, silver workers, and offerings managed through careful record-keeping. The ruler stands above this movement not simply as collector, but as guarantor. His officials demand goods because storehouses sustain the realm. His labour levies clear canals and construct walls because water and defence preserve life. His offerings maintain the divine relationship because sacred favour is believed to steady prosperity. His judges restrain abuses because injustice threatens public trust. His armies guard routes and borders because a harvest easily becomes another city's opportunity when protection fails. You enter Earth through a gate at morning. The lanes are crowded with deliveries. Sheep push reluctantly toward the pens. Jars of oil are unloaded from a cart. Wool bundles pass into a workshop. At a doorway, an elderly woman watches officials hurry past and shakes her head with the calm skepticism of someone who has survived several important men. Above the houses rises the great sacred platform of the moon god, visible from much of the city, proclaiming that life here gathers beneath divine presence. Within the royal court, a hymn is prepared in honour of Shulgi. He is praised as wise, vigorous, attentive, learned, powerful in battle, and devoted to divine service. Some compositions celebrate his ability to run long distances, master scribal knowledge, understand music, judge fairly, and care for temples. His royal image is almost suspiciously accomplished. One begins to suspect that even ancient praise singers understood the value of making an employer sound impressive in every available category. Yet these praises reveal a serious ideal. The king must appear able to sustain the entire exchange between divine blessing and human order. He is the person through whom abundance is organized, festivals maintained, roads secured, sacred houses honored, and justice made visible. If the land prospers, his favor seems confirmed. If famine, invasion, or disorder spreads, his position grows vulnerable beneath the very expectations that once supported it. In the city calendar, royal achievements become names for years. A year may be remembered for the building of a temple, the installation of a priestess, the defeat of an enemy, or the fashioning of a sacred object. Time itself is wrapped around acts that prove the king serves divine order. A child born in such a year enters a world already dated by royal obligation. A debt, marriage arrangement, delivery, or legal claim may be fixed within memory by naming what the ruler accomplished for gods and land. Even time bears the crown. At the foundations of temples, another curious sign of the arrangement lies hidden from daily sight. Small foundation figures, sometimes formed as kneeling divine beings carrying baskets, could be placed beneath important structures. Their burden supports the sacred building forever in symbolic form. Above them rise walls, rituals, royal inscriptions, and public splendor. Beneath them, unseen figures continue carrying what has been built. The image is difficult to forget. Divine beings carry baskets beneath temples. Humans carry baskets across fields and construction yards. Kings carry the responsibility of order in hymns and inscriptions. Everyone in the sacred system bears something, though the weight is not distributed equally. A modern fringe reading might say that such organised dependence remembers a literal contract imposed by the Anunnaki upon early humanity. Yet the ancient evidence suggests a more human and more enduring arrangement. People serve institutions because institutions promise survival, meaning belonging, food distribution, protection, and a place within the divine order. Kings claim heaven because heaven makes obedience feel larger than political convenience. Still, acceptance is not the same as contentment. A worker receiving barley rations may honour the city god and resent the overseer. A farmer may welcome soldiers at the boundary and curse the levy that feeds them. A mother may carry an offering to the shrine and privately ask why the gods require so much patience from people with so little comfort. Sacred order does not erase frustration. It gives frustration a world in which to speak, pray, endure, or occasionally mutter into a beer cup. Scholars continue to ask how deeply official claims of reciprocal blessing shape the thoughts of ordinary inhabitants. Royal hymns and temple accounts speak confidently of harmony between gods, king, and land. Private experience may have been far less orderly, yet the system survived because it offered something real alongside its demands. Canals that flowed, courts that judged, walls that protected, festivals that gathered families, stores that could distribute food, and a story explaining why human effort mattered. Twilight gathers over the field, the final baskets are carried away, leaving stubble beneath the darkening sky. In the city, lamps appear one by one. Somewhere, bread from this grain will be placed before a god. Somewhere, it will feed a child, a worker, a soldier, a priest, or a king. The ancient agreement may not have been hidden at all. It may have been visible in the harvest, accepted through habit, endured through need, and renewed whenever people offered their labour in return for one more season of order. Night has reached the museum again. Beyond the tall windows, rain has darkened the stone pavement and polished the empty streets into black mirrors. Inside, the galleries are closed, footsteps have withdrawn. Glass cases stand beneath gentle security lights, guarding bowls, seals, statues, fragments of wall decoration, and tablets whose signs remain alert despite the sleeping building. You walk alone through the quiet rooms. At one case, a cylinder seal rests beside the small impression it once made in wet clay. The seal itself is no larger than a finger joint, carved with tiny figures gathering around a seated deity. When rolled across soft clay, the hidden scene appears in sequence. Worshippers, divine symbols, ceremonial furniture, garments, lifted hands. An entire sacred encounter travels around the surface of a small stone object, waiting for pressure to reveal it. In Mesopotamian life, a seal could identify a person, authorize a delivery, secure a container, or authenticate an agreement. Some documents were placed inside clay envelopes, and the outer covering could be sealed by the parties involved. To inspect the original tablet, someone might have to break the envelope, rather like opening a letter whose wrapping is part of its legal protection. It is an elegant arrangement, although it surely produced the ancient equivalent of awkward silence whenever somebody claimed the seal had been perfectly intact moments earlier. The object draws you closer because it seems almost to answer the central question. Here is a device used for recognition and obligation. Here are divine figures shown beside human worshippers. Here is clay bearing the mark of authority. Yet the gods do not roll their own seals. The figures carved upon sacred scenes express reverence, legitimacy, petition, and divine presence. They do not leave behind a surviving signature from an Anunnaki council. Human hands carve the stone. Human hands roll it into clay. Human institutions preserve the record. Even when heaven fills the image, the document remains bound to earthly need. A little farther on, fragments from ancient literary tablets rest in low light. Their edges are rough, their writing interrupted where breakage has carried lines away. Some compositions were copied repeatedly in scribal schools. surviving through students who practice difficult words from stories already considered or old. A myth could outlast the city politics that first shaped it. A hymn could remain alive because young scribes, perhaps impatient and hungry, pressed its phrases into new clay under the watch of strict teachers. That is one of the quiet wonders of this world. The sacred past survives not only through kings and temples, but through copying. A ruler may demand immortality in stone, yet a student repeating a text centuries later may give it the longer life. The old gods continue to gather because hands keep writing their names. The ancient kings continue to receive impossible reigns because someone considers those lines worthy of another tablet. You stop before a dimly lit fragment and imagine the schoolroom where it was formed. The student's stylus hesitates. His teacher corrects a sign. Somewhere outside, another ruler governs another troubled city, confident that his own name will endure. Inside the school, the student copies words about a far older king, a remote divine decree, a sacred order already beyond ordinary memory. The supposed covenant survives in this manner, not as one complete revelation, but as an atmosphere repeatedly remade. Each copy renews the thought that kingship has sacred origins. Each temple song renews the thought that divine beings inhabit the city. Each royal inscription renews the expectation that a ruler must build, protect, purify, provide, and remain humble enough to fear the powers granting his place. Some modern imaginations still search for a sealed tablet waiting in a forgotten storeroom, its lines finally stating that beings from the heavens negotiated openly with human monarchs. They imagine a curator unfolding a translation so disruptive that every museum label must be rewritten by morning. It is a deliciously dramatic possibility, complete with locked drawers, nervous scholars, and perhaps one suspiciously flickering corridor lamp. But the ancient evidence gives a different kind of unease. There is no signed treaty to expose. There is an entire civilization in which human power repeatedly presents itself as answerable to divine will. There are kings who claim selection from above, workers whose labour feeds the sacred order, priests who conduct daily service, scribes who preserve obligations, and cities that interpret prosperity or ruin through the condition of their relationship with heaven. The agreement is not hidden behind a missing tablet. It is hidden in plain sight because it has become the language of living. A ruler does not need a divine signature when his title already assumes divine approval. A temple does not need contractual clauses when its meals, music, estates, and ceremonies repeatedly perform dependence upon the god. A farmer does not require a written explanation when a full harvest feels like blessing, and a ruined field feels like withdrawal. Human beings learn the shape of an arrangement through repetition, long before anyone thinks to gather its conditions upon one surface. Scholars still weigh how strongly this sacred language governed ordinary belief. Some inhabitants may have accepted it deeply, placing trust in gods, temples, and kings whose service appeared to protect the land. Others may have obeyed because institutions controlled grain, labour, courts, and force. Many probably lived within both realities, offering bread sincerely while distrusting an official, praying for the ruler while resenting his demand, hoping divine justice existed because human justice remained uneven. There is no clean boundary between belief and necessity. The museum case reflects your face faintly above the clay. For a moment, your features hover over the writing, joining the ancient signs with the modern visitor seeking an answer. The tablet does not yield one. It remains firm in its silence, neither confirming the grand secret nor making the old mystery disappear. Perhaps the first kings were simply memories enlarged into sacred time. Perhaps divine rule offered later monarchs a language strong enough to hold divided cities together. Perhaps the Anunnaki were understood as the solemn assembly of gods whose authority framed every human act of government. These explanations are grounded, careful, and persuasive. Yet they do not make the ancient world feel comfortable. For the deeper question is not whether non-human beings once signed a document with kings, The deeper question is why human society so often long to place power beyond challenge. Why must a ruler claim heaven? Why must labour become destiny? Why must suffering be explained as part of an order too high for ordinary people to question safely? The clay cannot answer in your language. It can only preserve the world that pressed those questions into form. Outside the museum, rain slows to a delicate tapping. In the gallery, the security lights remain gentle and steady. The cylinder seal rests beside its image of worship. The broken tablets keep their missing lines. The names of gods and rulers sleep beneath glass, neither entirely remote nor entirely gone. You turn away from the case, but the feeling travels with you. Somewhere beneath every royal claim lies a human need for safety. Somewhere beneath every divine command lies a fear of disorder. Somewhere beneath the imagined treaty lies the simple, ancient hope that life has terms, that obedience brings protection, that service is noticed, and that the forces governing the world may be persuaded to remain kind. Now the gallery grows softer around you. The lamps seem smaller, their warm reflections resting quietly upon glass and clay. You no longer need to solve what the tablet refuses to settle. The ancient city can remain far away, its canals silver beneath the moonlight, its temple doors closed, its ovens cool, its last footsteps fading gently through lanes of packed earth. The king has set aside his crown for the night. The scribe has covered his tablet. The worker has washed the dust from tired hands and found a place beside the quiet breathing of family. Even the gods, attended by lamps and lingering incense, seem content to keep their distance from your thoughts. You may let the questions loosen now. The rivers continue through darkness, not rushing, not demanding, simply passing through reeds and sleeping fields. A small boat rocks against its mooring. Somewhere, a night bird calls once across the marsh, then allows silence to gather again. The stars hang high above the plain, bright enough to guide, too distant to explain themselves. Perhaps no treaty was ever written. Perhaps people only looked toward heaven and tried to understand why power, duty, and survival seemed woven together. Perhaps the gods were names given to that enormous silence above the fields, the silence that could bless a harvest, receive a prayer, or remain unanswered. And perhaps uncertainty is not a door left open to fear. Perhaps it's only a quiet room, holding what cannot yet be known, while you rest safely beyond its threshold. The tablets are still now. The reeds scarcely move. The old cities sink gently beneath the calm earth of memory. And perhaps the story is not yet complete. End of script. Good night.